Allegiance first. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, and with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the June 2nd Plnbrd meeting at 6 p.m. All in room 103. And our first order is board business at 6 o'clock. Board member input? Anybody got anything?
I think Maren wanted to talk about our upcoming meetings, so it'll be good.
Yeah, we haven't talked about summer meeting schedule yet, and given the number of applications in front of us and several more applications on the way, we need to know when everybody can be here. The July meeting would be the same week as 4th of July, and sometimes we skip that, sometimes we don't.
What day is the 4th fall on?
4th is one more. 4th is a Monday.
So we would be meeting after that? Yeah, I don't have a problem with after the 4th. Does anyone have a problem meeting after the 4th? Or do you want to skip that week?
Well, I think I saw Maren's email saying that we might need another June meeting.
Yeah.
So in that case, we could skip that July meeting and then have one maybe the
Little
week
later
after.
on.
Yeah.
Yep. So, yeah, and thank you, Anna, because I was going backwards on that. Also recommending a second meeting in June. We had done a schedule before, and the 9th did not work for everybody, but there's the 16th, 23rd, and 30th. Are any of those good?
16th,
I can't do the 16th.
23rd?
I can do the 23rd.
Anybody else? Everybody else good with?
I can do the 23rd.
I'm fine.
I have a work commitment from 6:30 to 8 on the 23rd, so I guess one of us will have to be gone.
Okay, so then that puts us to the 30th? Does that work?
Is that too far out? Do you want to pick another
Does
day?
it have to be a Thursday?
Actually, no, it does not have to be a
Could we
Thursday.
do like the 22nd?
So-
Wednesday, the 22nd?
Or I could do the 15th.
I could do the 22nd, or the 15th, or the 16th. Actually, take it back, the 16th or the 22nd, so.
What about you?
I'm fine.
You good?
And so let me circle back, maybe the 9th was good.
Our 9th wasn't really good for
Okay,
me.
okay,
No.
okay, I take that back. So,
22nd?
so 22nd, Wednesday, 22nd?
Or the 15th, either or. Which one would you rather? No, Anna said she was good for the 15th.
Actually, I bagged out because I have a speaking engagement, so I can't do
Okay.
that.
22nd then?
Wednesday, the 22nd, okay.
6 p.m.?
Yeah,
If that works for everybody.
yeah, 6 is fine.
Second.
Okay.
Um,
Anything else?
Anything I can presume, no. Thank you, because just guessing, we're not going to finish everything up.
What, tonight?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course we are. 2-minute rule. We're doing the Reader's Digest version.
Yeah, but
Hey, just to put it out there, what about Tuesday, the 14th? It's a week sooner.
Tuesday the 14th. Well, Cultural Council and Finance Committee are both meeting, but they're Zoom, and that might be a conservation night, but they're Zoom. So, meeting room, yeah, we could,
You want to do it sooner rather than later?
that's,
I don't care. Do you guys want to do the 14th?
that works.
I'm going back to the July meeting. Are we doing this in addition to a July meeting or not?
Yeah, because we will have some new applications that we
Okay.
have to do, start in July.
That's fine.
So what are we doing, in lieu of the 22nd, we're doing the 14th now?
12th. No, 14th.
Tuesday,
Tuesday
14th.
the 14th.
14th, whatever. What she said.
I can do that.
All
The
right.
14th, okay.
Jeff and Bartlett and I don't have a life, so we're good. We look forward to this.
I'll speak for yourself, Mark.
All right, so the 14th at 6.
6 PM, okay. So that brings me back to the July schedule. What would you like to do?
Well, why don't we take the first week of July off and we'll meet the second week?
Meet the 14th?
Okay.
Works for me.
I'm good with that?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Meet the week of July 14th?
Yeah, instead of,
The first week of July, right
Yeah,
after the
that would
4th, in
be
case
good.
people go away for the 4th. Okay.
All right, thank you very much.
So
Anything else, board business, anything else?
14th of July?
Yep.
My only input is that the Transfer of Development Rights Committee would like some help from the planning board figuring out how to structure zoning in receiving areas.
Do you want to be on that meeting, July 14th? Would you be ready?
Well,
Do you want to try June?
yeah, I can have something by then, but it's more sort of exploring with the planning board
Okay.
what the options are in terms of structuring a receiving area.
Okay. Well, we started that receiving, and so we do have some of the stuff, so maybe we can pull that up, Myron, and we can revisit it on, what date, when do you want to do it?
Either one, doesn't
Yeah.
matter.
Why don't you schedule it for either or?
Okay.
Anyone else? Any other?
so I just had a follow-up question for Maren regarding the planning department goals. You had mentioned that the presentation was today. How did that go?
It was, thank you for asking. I just presented a very quick overview to the select board about the planning department goals. There's a lot of upcoming plans and studies that the town has. Most of them has most of them funded. It's just going to be a lot to get through over the next year. Big overall request is for staffing.
What about, how are we doing with the train station stuff? Have we learned any more from the state? Are we going to know any more?
We're- I'm still working on the model advisory group. It's a group, and that includes consultants. It's working on a tool for the state to use and for communities to use to identify whether or not their zoning meets. And as they're drafting zoning, each community is drafting zoning, whether or not that zoning will meet the state requirements. The state is still several months away from their final guidelines, so we're basically on hold with that.
How
So,
we-
go ahead.
How are you with the MassWorks grant that we need for tomorrow? Are we close?
No, not yet.
Well, I just letting everybody know how busy Myron's been.
Yep. The consultant has uploaded a lot of detail. I was able to add some of the master plan goals and some of the transportation work that we've been doing. Planning that we've done in the past that gives us, quote, extra points on the applications. So that part is going well.
Midnight tomorrow is the deadline, right?
Correct, and Water Department and Town Administrator's Office and consultant and I have a Zoom tomorrow morning just to make sure we have everything ready to go. So by midday tomorrow, we should be all set.
You had another question?
Right, so the planning grant that you had sent to us, so that's the proposed work for the train station area, right?
Correct.
And so would that supersede anything that was proposed spring 2021? I was just trying to figure out if we got a grant to do that work, does that mean that it will then be the one that we would look to when and if that moves forward?
Okay, the grant is to hire a consultant to move us from where we are now across the finish line.
Got it, so it's taking the current work and moving it forward.
Well, taking everything that we've done and getting input from the town and considering the eventual guidelines from the state and moving that forward. I don't think I've heard a policy decision from the board on exactly what direction you want to go yet, but that would, that'd be part of the kickoff.
So then, you were also working on a group to test the current state housing rules, the latest ones. How is that going?
That was the overview that I just gave to Mark about the model group. That work is going very well. It's very exciting to be part of this group that's providing input and testing the model, because there are so many different communities. And the two test communities are Arlington and Littleton, and Arlington has maybe 1,000 parcels, and Littleton has maybe a handful of parcels to consider. So it's quite a broad range that the state is trying to make fit.
Does that have like an end date or proposed reporting out time period?
Well, let's see, this DHCD is going to be presenting at the Mass Housing Partnership, what am I trying to say? The Housing Institute that they have every year. So next Tuesday and Wednesday, one of the groups speaking will be Mass Housing Partnership, just outlining the work that the modeling group is doing, and I believe they're going to try to do some testing of the model at that point.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, then that work will feed into DHCD's final guidelines.
Thanks for those updates.
Yeah.
I have one more update. So Maren and I met today with the member of the group, National Development, who came in about senior housing, wanted to propose age-in-place. They were here last meeting about the age-in-place senior housing.
Okay.
Remember they met with us last month, a couple of weeks ago?
I thought they meant
That wasn't at the public hearing.
No, that was you and I sat with them.
Yeah.
And Jeff.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay, so, yeah, okay.
I'm glad I didn't
Oh, that's
nod.
right, all right. So we all met with National Development about potential of bringing age-in-place senior housing. I thought did we give them an
We were
update?
in this room but
Right.
it was
They
in
were
the-
sitting
But didn't we
right
give
there.
them an update on what was going on? Maybe not. Okay.
Somebody else in a purple sweater must have been sitting here, so
Yeah,
that's why you
what
thought it was me.
That's what it was. I'm kidding. So anyway, so they met with us to talk about the potential of bringing age-in-place senior housing to Littleton. They want to build like 100, 120 units of age-in-place, starting with independent care, then going to assisted living, then
memory care.
memory care, all the way up to dementia. They own Bridges in Westford. They own 32 senior housing facilities in the state of Massachusetts, and they want to try to come into Littleton. So they met with us, and we talked about different areas and different locations, and they obviously have to have town sewer and a bunch of other ideas. So we suggested maybe have a meeting with Sam Park at the Point, because he still has the parcel that's not going to be the second hotel there. Obviously with COVID and everything else, it's been a challenge to fill one hotel. So Maren and I met with the people from National Development at Sam Park about 2 hours ago, just to lay the groundwork to see if there's some interest, there's mutual interest on both parts, whether it happens or not. We did want to reiterate to National Development that we're very interested in senior age-in-place housing in Massachusetts, in Littleton, so that we'd be willing to work with them if there are other spots available for that. But their big criteria is, in order to make it affordable and everything else, this has to be sewer involved. So they're looking at places up there. They're looking at other alternatives, but they're definitely interested in trying to come up with about 100, 110 units for true age-in-place housing in Littleton.
Well, are you talking to them as well about the area near the train station?
We have, but the problem with that is there's no sewer. They want sewer in place. They don't want to put sewer in, they want sewer in place.
So, but I
But
also.
they do know about it.
Yeah,
They've actually
because
talked to-
that would fit in with our master
I
plan.
know, and they have spoken with the Longs about it, and the drawback to them right now is the expense of putting sewerage in.
But I want to be clear, Anna, that their idea of affordability is affordability to them, not to,
Well, no, preface now, affordability for the independent units. There's gonna be a percentage of affordability there. After that, you have to pay for the care. It won't be an affordable component for whatever care you need afterwards, but there will be some sort of, we didn't.
Yeah, but they were clearly put off by the numbers in our bylaw.
Yeah. They were looking at more than 10 to 15% for affordability in the independent living stuff.
And the availability of sewer would, go into that, because it's a, $3+ million sewer investment for such a facility, so, anyway, so.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But it's
And-
preliminary,
Right.
right?
Oh, yeah.
I'm just
They-
interested in
Yeah.
that.
And one of the things I'm taking away from that conversation is we went into the latest update for the senior residential development bylaw without having much input from developers of the independent, or the assisted living and the memory care, of how that may or may not work. So if we have more information from them over time, we might need to tweak the bylaw.
We also talked to them, because they're a big outfit, they could probably find out who to speak with at the care facility we have in town right now to try to see if there was some potential to expand that, have them add to that too, so we at least have them looking at that, and they do have a sewage treatment plant already in place there, so hopefully, they're very interested in coming here, maybe they can be creative about how to get here, so. Anyway, that's my update on it. I'm sorry I
Great.
forgot that you guys didn't get all of it, and that's my mistake. I apologize. Anyway, so that's it. We're now 5 minutes late on my point. We have a public hearing, amended Hager Homestead Consolidation Decision, special permit, add 2 units, federal house. That's all it says.
Yeah, so this is the first hearing, so I'll read the notice. The Littleton Planning Board will hold a public hearing on Thursday, June 2nd, 2022, at 6:15 PM in room 103 of the 37 Shattuck Street Town Offices to consider an application for special permits pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, and the Code of the Town of Littleton zoning. The application to amend the senior residential development, aquifer and water resource district, and site plan for Hager Homestead at 336 and 338 King Street. The applicant is requesting an amendment to the December 2020 consolidated decision to reflect site conditions regarding the federal house and to add 2 independent living units. And it goes on to explain where you can find the application and plans, and so if you're looking to provide comment, you can email that to me or attend the public hearing. Signed, Bartlett Harvey, clerk.
Great job, Barry.
Thanks.
Bruce, give us a overview of why you're here.
Good evening. If Marin's bringing up the site plan to the second sheet, that'd be great. During the development of the property, we've been into the old Federalist house and have found that there are a number of structural issues throughout the building. We have had a number of structural the structural engineer has done a number of reviews, and we've had a number of 3 different folks for looking at shoring up the building so that we can do the repairs that are within it. All of this is brought on costs that are substantially higher than what the contingency funds were that we had in place for dealing with an old structure. So we're over $1 million for dealing with structural issues and repairs alone. The rear right corner of the foundation and the rear right side of the foundation have to be replaced. The brick wall on the rear right corner has issues. We have prepared in this application 2 alternatives. One which would be to maintain the structure and do everything we can to have that structure work. And the other would be to replace it in kind. We have had tours with a number of you folks, folks from the Historic Commission. We met with the Historic Commission last night, and at this point in time, we'd like to remove from this request an alternative to build in kind, and we'll do everything in our power to save the structure. It's what we've always wanted to do, it's just the cost and the time frame with everything involved. We're trying to find the best approach. The biggest issue is that there's going to be so much structural repair to this building, both on the front wall and the rear wall, and potentially as I mentioned, the foundation corners, that we're concerned there's not going to be anything really of the building left. But it's been clear in our conversations with people that everybody wants to keep the building. And to keep that building with these additional costs, what we're asking for is 2 additional units to be added to the 24 units. So we would have a total of 26 units on the property. Further, to complicate it just a little bit, we have 2 larger units that are in what we call the RU building, the retained unit, the residential unit that Marin's got the cursor around right now. What we'd like to do is pull those from there and put those on one floor of the Federalist Building and 2 units on the second floor of the Federalist Building. Sheldon will explain that in a minute as soon as I go through this. What that does to us from a site constraints, this particular site was done before we came across this option. And when we take the 2 units that are in the townhouse configuration, they require 2 parking places each, so that's 4 parking places. We currently have 1 extra parking place. If we move those units into the building, those 2 plus 2 more into the existing Federalist Building, that'll be 4 parking places, because there's only 1 parking space per unit in an IL situation, in the independent living situation. And we have proposed 2 additional parking spaces. We had 1 extra before. So if we didn't put the 2 additional parking spaces on, we're at a net 0 because we increased by 2 units. That's 2/3 of a parking space. So we have to add another guest parking space because it's 1 guest parking space for every 3 units. So we would be at a net 0. But at this point, we've added 2 parking spaces on, so we will still have 2 additional guest parking spaces or parking spaces for the tenants to use. So that in a nutshell is it. We had previously in value engineering reduced the width of the carports down, so we're still below our impervious area that we permitted for, so those 2 new parking spaces don't need any additional space for our drainage because we're actually below the impervious area that we permitted with you. And if we can go to where do you want to start, Sheldon? The second sheet?
Should we go to, I don't know what order they're in, but if the second sheet is the building plan.
Yeah, the second sheet of the architectural sheets.
Okay, it'll take a moment to get done.
Yep. So in these drawings that Sheldon will speak of, we had side-by-side comparisons if we were to replace in kind. So we're not going to be looking at that. We're going to be looking at the right-hand side of the page for all practical purposes.
Maren, it'll be the first page of the architectural set. Yours is first. It's a second? Okay. Yep, I'll let it be. Second. Perfect.
Is that what you want to start on?
That's what I want to say. Yep,
All
yep.
right,
Starting
you get the
again.
mic, my
Good.
friend. This is Sheldon Penoyer.
Sheldon Penoyer Architects. It's nice to see everybody in person because we went through this process virtually. What you'll see there is essentially down the page is the street side. We're proposing to leave that elevation exactly as it is. And what we're doing is the back side of the building, so if you looked, it's essentially divided up the page in 3 sections. You have the first section is a 1-bedroom apartment. The second section is again a 2-bedroom apartment on the upper side, and then we have an egress stair that we have to add to the back. That last third section on the top of the page is the current approved screen porch. It was an enclosed sort of 3-season porch on the building previously. That's been torn off and will be replaced. And what we're proposing to do is, if you go to the next, so on the second floor, what that page shows the elevation. That's the street elevation as you know it. The right-hand side is the building as it exists. The left-hand side was the replacement in kind, but we're not doing that. So essentially, the building is going to remain as everybody knows it, but it'll have living units in it instead of the common house. And if you wanted to look, Maren, at the next page, it shows essentially the one on the right is the brick facade as you know it. Right now, the building has, and you can see the dotted line of that shed, the shed structure or the porch structure off the left-hand side of the elevation. What we're proposing in this is to extend out upward, although so that we get enough room on the second floor for that, the 2 units. So that, so to summarize it, you can see the drawings are showing the reality of what we have to deal with. The chimneys have been a problem. There's a engineering report. Do you know if Maren got that?
Yeah.
Maren, we sent an engineering report that we got a little bit late today that just describes some of the problem areas that we went over in the tour. So I don't think it's anything new to those who attended the tour, but it outlined some of the problem areas, and one of them is around the brick chimneys. And that's done by Ruben Gorchino, who's our structural engineer. And so if there are any questions in terms of the design.
The one thing that neither of us mentioned and is key is we're not losing the common house. The common house is going to move to the retained unit, and we'll put all the common structures that they want, the common kitchen, the dining area, the crafts rooms, the meeting rooms, that'll all be in the retained unit. It's all handicap accessible per the regulations. We'll move the 2 handicap parking spaces that we had in front of the building over to right up against the retained unit. I didn't show that on our plan because we had submitted it before we got to this point. But the need for this is to try to offset some of these costs that we've run into. It's not going to cover them by any stretch of the imagination, but it will certainly help, and it will keep the project so that it can move forward.
And I think the main thing is we really heard in the tours, and last night we heard that there was a real desire to keep the building. There's a lot of challenges to that, but I think, after we really looked hard at it, we came back and said, let's give this the best, effort we can, and that's where we're headed.
Thank you. The board have any questions? Anna?
I do. Would you like to begin with someone else?
Lisa? Go ahead. Jeff?
Well, I want to sort of, do you have questions about the market of, the rates of the 2 new units, or?
I have just a lot of questions.
Okay.
So
well, for those of you who went through the whole permitting process, we had a big discussion about affordability. And since this was approved under the senior housing bylaw, we have, a bylaw about that. So I guess the question would be, how will these 2 new units, and actually it's 2 new units but 4 reconfigured units, how will that work into what we've agreed upon?
So
I don't remember at this point.
We have an agreed upon piece where I think it was 10 units in total.
There are 10 units currently that are income restricted.
Right. At various levels of AMI.
At various levels. One of the benefits of this plan is on the market rate units, which the 2 from the retained unit were, moving those into the federal home, and the 2 new units are actually going to be smaller in square footage than what was originally proposed in the retained unit, which helps bring the market rate prices for those units down.
Okay. But there's no change in the overall agreement we have?
Not at this time.
Okay.
we're trying to keep the project alive.
Yes.
As you all remember, there are 14 owners right now of the project that are funding this project. So they're the people that are going to be living there. And, you know, right after, we were in the pandemic when we were permitting this thing, and everything skyrocketed. They had to gather up funds to get through the additional building costs, and now we've run into, you know, over $1 million plus in overruns on trying to save this building.
The additional revenue from the additional units doesn't come close to covering the cost.
Okay. I had just then another question about my own curiosity. It looks like you did some geotechnical work on the side, and, you know, you're going to build a structural slab and build on top of that. And was that anticipated, or was that another unknown?
The helical piles were anticipated.
Okay.
The geotechnical reports had indicated that there was poor soils,
Yeah.
poor soil compaction there. The extent of the helical piles was unknown
Right.
until we were able to take down the dental structure
Yeah.
and physically bore in certain locations. So there are probably twice as many helical piles than what was originally anticipated.
Okay.
They average about 17 to 18 feet deep.
Oh, yeah,
That's their
I've
average.
been involved in those kind of things.
And they are required here in the renovation by the structural engineer. In the places
Okay.
that we have to repost, we actually have to pull up certain areas within the basement foundation floor.
Mhm.
Actually, pour new footings, and those footings include helical piles
Okay.
as well.
So let me just say that I'm really pleased with your approach tonight. And I would also, you know, I'd also like to say that I appreciate all of your work. And as I've been observing the project, I mean, it's a really well-maintained site and looks very professional, and but I would like to just reflect on, from the planning board's point of view, if we ever had a project like this again, I think I would want to see a historic restriction placed on any historic structures that we are assuming is going to, you know, stay. And I would also like to say that I personally would be very supportive had you decided to tear down the building to invoke demolition delay, and which would be a process that we, you know, have available to us. So I'm really glad, you know, the way that you've come out of this.
Thank you. Brad, do you have anything?
Well, my impression during the tour was that it was going to be very difficult to maintain that building because there's so much of the timbers frame into the brick walls, and there's no way to work with that. I'm very happy that you are going to try to keep that building. I mean, I think that's important. I think, yeah, I'm happy for that, but I'm going to be interested to see how you do it.
We all are. Anna, why don't you give us your questions or concerns?
Yeah, so keeping the building, I think, is definitely great to hear. So I want to broach the whole subject that the applicant here is making it seem like a fait accompli, that they're going to get residential units in there, even though that was never discussed during the last time that they were before us. And in fact, I would say that if you look at page 3 of that document, okay, maybe it was page 1 then, that wasn't part of what was provided to us on May 27th. And in fact, when I was looking at all of this information on 2 days ago, on May 31st, that page wasn't on there. So what I would like to point out is that I firmly believe that this applicant is disingenuous from day one. And in terms of what they are proposing now, as a developer, developers take on risk. They have money to make money, and they take on risk. And so the fact that they are now asking for 4 units in the common house, which was supposed to be a cornerstone of our community, to continue to be something that community members could go and engage in activities on, and now no community member will ever be able to go into that house because they're going to be private residences. That takes away from us as a community, I believe. So that's my first concern about this, is that that common house was never supposed to have residential units. If you want to go through the transcripts, go through all the video, it was always supposed to be the common house, period. And it was also supposed to be inclusive of our Littleton community members. So assuming even that we were to actually consider housing units, well, at least 2 of them would need to be affordable units. But I want to go back to number 1, because I don't even think that these should be allowed. I do not believe that the common house should have private residential units. That was not what we agreed to.
You good?
Is that it? Oh,
No, I'm,
oh.
okay. Do you want to?
Do you want me to respond, or?
Go ahead.
First off, we don't take anything for granted. My life is before boards. I don't take anything for granted anywhere. And we went through a long process with you folks, so this certainly is not. We are asking to try to keep this project moving forward. And that's why we're asking for 2 more units to help defer some of the cost. The issue of providing a common house was key and foremost, but providing a common house in our planning process had been all over the place in the various different schemes. You know, long before we got to the planning board, it was in various different portions of the site. So we're maintaining a common house, it's just in a different building on the site. And it is still open to the town residents and the events that they put on. They'll still be inviting folks from the town to come into it. It's still a key thing. It's just not going to be in this building. This building is something that, you know, we've done everything we can to maintain it, and we're continuing to take it to another level to, you know, structurally shore up this building to do the repairs that are necessary. We've provided you with the structural plans that the structural engineers have put together for it, and that every beam has to either be replaced or sistered in the sills. There's nothing here that's been disingenuous, and that we are not, we don't have a developer, as she says, that's in this to making money. We have a developer that is helping guide the community, the 14 members that have set up this community and moved it forward, to help them guide through and coordinate through the permitting process and coordinate ourselves and the contractors. But there's no big pool of money developer or anything of that nature involved in this project. So to say that, and as soon as we've had an issue and had ideas of how to deal with it, we were contacted the board, we contacted the Historic Commission. We tried to show everybody and be as upfront about the whole thing as physically possible.
And we listened.
And we listened.
Came out of this listening.
And we applied with 2 options, and we're going with 1.
So basically what we're doing is, we as a town, if we allow this to happen, we are allowing a historic home, okay, that had been promised to be used as a common house to go into 4 different private residences.
But it was already a private home.
I know, but that's not what we had agreed to,
But
Lisa.
it was a common house. They were basically saying that they would invite people, but, I mean, there's plenty of common space here in town now. I mean, to me, this belongs to the 14, or it'll be 26 people, and if they want to invite the community to attend some of their events, that's great. But I don't feel that we as a community own that house or have any say over what its use is. I personally am thrilled that we're going to get 2 more units, because is that what we've been saying all along? We need more senior residential housing? We have an opportunity here. We get 2 more units. If they put the common area, their common area in another building, personally, I don't care. That's their decision,
Well, and.
not our decision.
And
And I'm
the-
thrilled, by the way, that you're going to try and save the building, so thank you.
And that is your perspective, so thank you
Yes.
for sharing that.
Well,
I have one more quick thing
Okay.
that I wanted to mention on this. So I also want everyone to understand that this development is receiving something that nobody else has been able to receive either. They have filed for a grant, I believe, from the state, and they have been awarded $225,000 from the state to connect into the sewer system. That is something else that nobody else gets, okay? So the fact that they're saying that they're not, that woe is me because, now we have all of this that we have to do, that is risk. Every development has to take on risk, and you have to figure out how to pay for it. And in this case, you're already getting an extra $225,000 that nobody else in this town is getting. So all of that goes to say that there's a lot going on here, and being able to do what's right, what was committed to, and now you're completely changing the picture because you don't want to take on the risk, that just doesn't sit well with me. So that's all I have to say.
Okay. I'm just going to weigh in. When we went through the process, you talked about a community room there where people could come get together to cook, to enjoy each other, to look out for each other. I have to agree with Lisa. I would love to, if it was still in the federal building, the big old house. We don't own it. It doesn't, if it's going to cost too much money to renovate it, I definitely do not want it torn down. If that's the only other option is to do what you have to do, then I reluctantly agree that saving the house is paramount, as far as I'm concerned. That's what we all agreed to. That was the look we wanted to see. And if it costs more money, in these days and age, we go to Home Depot and a 2x4 is $12. Everything's costing more money. I get that part of it. We were never going to own, as Lisa said, the inside of that building. We would like to see it, we would like to have it restored, but it was going to be those people there, the people that are all buying into this project, were going to own it. If the fact that they have to move to the back to still support, to save that, I think that outweighs everything else we wanted to get out there. That's saving the house and keeping the look of it, I think, is paramount. I agree with you that it's not what we agreed to, but in these day and age, with the uncertainty of what's going on, I think this is the best alternative we can hope for it. I'm disappointed, but the most important thing, and I told Bruce when he first presented, is I won't vote for it unless you save the house. The house is critical. And if this is what it takes to save the house, then I think I'm in favor of going the way we did. And as far as affordability and everything else, we got 10 units out of 24. I think we did pretty good on it. I think the most important thing is to make this project viable moving forward. I don't think we should talk about affordability or anything else with it. We got 10 out of 24. It's going to be 10 out of 26, and we're still going to save the house, and people are going to still see it as the way it is. I think we have to give a little to get what
I think
we're
that's a
able to.
slippery slope.
It is also, I think, the best senior residential housing we have in Littleton. I mean, compared to Jones Meadow, you look at the amenities this is going to provide compared to Weber Village. This hits every single, when you go down a point of checklist of what seniors are
agree with
looking
you.
for.
We have to make sure that what they're doing is what is the best we could hope for, and that's where I'm coming forward with it.
I would also like to add that at the last town meeting, we just approved a huge amount of money for a senior center, which presumably will be open to the whole town. So the conditions on the ground have changed a little bit since we approved this project, which was 2 years ago.
2 years ago,
Yeah. And
our library's opened, too.
And I would, when we're in that house, it's been pretty much, and it's not you guys, but it's the previous owner, it has been, substantially altered.
Degraded.
And it's, I could tell that there's some features that are original, but some of them I'm not so sure. The flooring is really nice. I don't know what you're going to do with the second floor for acoustics, but that's up to you. So I think in some ways the RU might be even better because you can have an event there that's separate from, that's separated from living units, so it won't be a disturbance. I don't know. I think that it's they could come before us and say, we don't want to have common space. We just want to, bag in more units.
Actually, that's part of their decision, so.
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying what they could, So I think that's I'm not as concerned, I think the building has to be saved. I'm not as concerned about the use of it.
Jeff, can I just make a point?
Yeah.
So we did look at the pros and cons of the RU building becoming the community space versus the historic building, and we need to go this route. But we looked at one of the advantages of the RU becoming the common space is it's next to the barn, which is then going to support a garden, a community, within the community garden. And so we said, okay, there are pros and cons to it, but that was one of the things is we sort of created more intensity around the community uses.
I hear that, and the other thing I might want to suggest is we had talked about a trail, through, could that connect to the new community space in the sense that people could use the parking here at Shattuck Street? I mean, you're going to be pressed for parking if you did have a community event. A wider community event. Just a consideration.
It's closer to the trail.
Yeah. No. I know.
I'm going to open it up, see if anyone, is there anyone in the audience who'd like to speak on this issue? There's a lot of people here, so. Since I know your name, Walter, I'll start with you.
Yes, my name is Warren Terrell. I'm here representing the Congregational Church of Littleton. We had a meeting with the engineer to try to understand what was happening, and it became very apparent to us as a congregation that, yes, this house is going to be, still appears like the existing house, and I'm happy to hear that the option is to rebuild, remodel, replace, help out the existing house. That's a very good thing. But on a wider approach, I think what we have here actually is a joining together of the goals of the town of Littleton in providing seniors housing, a meeting of the goals in the affirmative of what the Congregational Church of Littleton is supporting as part of our mission outreach to provide affordable and seniors housing, and obviously an applicant who wants to do just that. So I'm looking at this as a win, and a win in putting together a project that meets the goals of these three entities. And I just might point out, the Congregational Church of Littleton is not going anywhere. Been here since 1840. And it's the working together of the community, faith community, the town of Littleton, and the residents of Littleton that makes this a reality. And that is why the Congregational Church has supported from the beginning the development of this site for seniors housing, with a significantly large percent of those units being legally affordable.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Name from Maren, please.
My name is Gwen Hotaling, Hotaling. I'm a Littleton resident, and I am a prospective buyer of one of the affordable units at Hager Homestead. I've been attracted to co-housing for quite a while, and I was absolutely thrilled that this project is coming to Littleton. And it's, to me, it's more than just the house. it's the community. And I've been increasingly impressed with the integrity of the members of the community, of the professionals that we're working with, as each problem has come across, that they've creatively tried to work very hard to help the town meet the goals of keeping seniors in the town. And so I have nothing but praise for the project and also for the board for, that this has not been an easy task to wrap around, like, can we keep the house? How's it going to go? I'm very happy, very, very happy to speak in support of this project, and I hope that we will be able to go forward with this because I want to stay in Littleton. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, in the back.
Linda Stein, I'm Chair of the Littleton Historical Commission. Last night, the Historical Commission had a meeting, and we formally recommended that the existing historic Hager Homestead House be preserved. We were surprised tonight to hear that that's the option that the proponents have chosen. We're very pleased to hear that. We're thrilled with that option. I know it's hard, and I want to thank the proponents. I know that they've been very open with us about the problems, the structural problems with this site, with the house, and I appreciate that you are going to keep the house and somehow maintain and preserve and restore and rehabilitate the house. So thank you. And we appreciate the support of some of the board members who have expressed that you would definitely like the house preserved. So thank you, and this will be part of the history of Littleton that will remain.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Mary Ellen Bersani. I'm a Littleton resident, and I'm just speaking up in support of Hager Homes, and I think it's important that we keep the seniors here in Littleton, and I'm all for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
My name is Liz Wood, and I just have two questions. You mentioned that so there are going to be 2 more units, and you said like 10 out of 24 originally were affordable housing or low income, I'm not sure. And so they're adding 2 more units, and you're not trying to make them affordable, or because you sort of said, well, we got 10 out of 26 now.
Yeah.
So
60%.
are you trying to make it affordable, or you like,
No,
well, whatever?
I think they've done the most they can with it. I'm not supporting that they make the 2 that they have to build to
Okay.
support the building affordable as well. I think
Okay.
10 out of 24 was pretty good that we got the first time. So now it's going to be 10 out of 26.
So I guess it's just out of whose pocket the money comes, the buyer, I mean,
The buyers.
The buyer.
the buyers,
yeah.
right, rather than.
So the buyers
so-
support all the affordable units. They don't come out of the street. The
Right.
people
Yeah.
buy the regular units. and
Mr.
pay.
Chair,
Yeah,
just
no,
a point of
I
order.
know that it was sort
I
of
wanna make sure-
historical.
I don't mean to.
So my
Point
other
of
question
order.
is,
Yeah,
my
you
other
should-
question is, I was wondering, when you were talking, Anna, about having access as a community center to the historic house, you weren't talking, my understanding is you weren't talking, I just want any house for, any place for a meeting or a gathering. You wanted this house because of its historic value? Like-
So to answer your question, it's what was told to us back when the original application was that it was going to be in that house. And so that is the plan that was submitted, and so that is the plan that I have to work with. And so
Right.
that's why I said this is a really big change, and there were never supposed to be residential units in that house. It was supposed to be 5,000 square feet of amenity space for the residents, for the people who are going to be living there, and to invite community members when appropriate.
Well, I guess what I was wondering is it satisfactory to you that a new place is going to be the community center? Or is it important to have it in that? I'm just curious.
I thought it was going to be important because, again, it's a historical home, and
Right.
it would be wonderful to be able to have it opened up to the entire community, because it
Because other
has been
people were
part of
saying,
residents.
yeah, we got a place for you, but
It's not the same.
What's that?
It's not the
Okay.
same, right. So that's just, again, that's my
Mhm.
particular opinion. But I would like to go back to what you broached in your first question, and that is around affordability. So I completely disagree with Chair Montanari, and in fact, we have the Affordable Housing Trust Chair on this board as well, and I would like to ask, are you willing to then forego an affordable couple of units? Are you all willing to forego following our own bylaw?
We are following our bylaw. 10 out of 26 is still well within the bylaw.
Right. And so you don't want more for your town residents?
No, I think this is a unique situation that they've done the best they could. They gave us 10, they've given us more than any other developer that came before us. The percentages we got and everything else, we got 10 out of 24, that was great. Now they've come before us because there's unforeseen problems that threaten the viability of the whole project, to be perfectly honest, and I don't think we should be more concerned about the people that are already wanting to buy it and the preservation of the building than trying to get another affordable unit. I think we did pretty good the first time, and I don't think we should be looking at any more affordability
I
there.
agree. I think the fact that
wait,
we're
there are-
preserving the building is significant.
There are details to the affordability. So one thing that is going to happen is that they're, as they've mentioned, they're going to take two expensive units, expensive market rate units, and they're going to become less expensive market rate units, which does have an impact on affordability. But the other thing is, we have had, I can't remember, it's 2 years, did we have a designation of which units were affordable?
Yes.
And were there either of them in the RU were affordable? So, so technically, okay, so I guess I would just say that in the overall picture, they are, if they're selling square footage, they're giving up, they're not, it's not like they're getting additional 2 units, they're getting less than that because they're giving up 2 big units that they can sell.
More expensive ones.
More expensive ones. And while, and I just want to, tell the people here that affordability doesn't mean subsidies, or, I mean, there are some, even the new affordability standards that were just released, in our area, it is $2,500 a month for a 2-bedroom is considered affordable. It's just a crazy world. And so kudos to, I know Anna really worked hard on the original affordability component. But unless the town is putting in money, and on the other hand, Anna did point out they got a sewer subsidy from the state, which may or not be reflected in the overall thing. That's something that I think is reasonable to weigh into this affordability talk. But I guess I would say that I'm not. I'm very happy that they're saving the house, and I'm not sure I want to go down the additional affordability route.
Anyone else?
Did we finish the public hearing? Wasn't that still open?
Yes, I'm going to stop it, but I'll let you
Okay,
talk.
Jonathan Leibowitz, also a member of the Historical Commission. I don't want to go on too long. I also second what our chair said. We're delighted with the result. We've had a great, I've been working on this longer than a lot of other people going into the Zoom meetings and so on. And I will say that everybody has been very, has paid a lot of attention to historical issues, they've revised things in order to meet some of the objections or questions that I raised, and I really do appreciate that. And the final thing I would like to ask the team is, you've done a fantastic job if you're able to save this building. Could you send us eventually, when this is all done, something about what were the crucial things that enabled you to do it, so that when this comes up again, we can say, here's what they did, you can do this too. I really do appreciate that. Thank you very much for what you've done.
Thank you.
Don't we?
Can I just, I'm sorry, can I just say one more thing?
One last.
One more thing. Could you still do this project? Is it still, if one of those 2 new units is affordable, in affordable housing?
Even with the additional revenue that we gain from these 2 additional units, it's still at a loss. The renovation costs here, the restoration cost of this home, just the structural alone, is close to $900,000.
And what's the difference in pricing for some affordable housing and
Well, in total, to put this house back together, it's going to be about $1.6 million. The 2 additional units are going to bring in approximately $900,000.
And if one of them was affordable, how much?
Oh, it would drop by, depends on the level of affordability, but $100,000 or $200,000.
In the whole scheme of the project? That would mean a lot to someone.
You know what, I'm gonna stop.
Okay.
We've talked about this enough. I want to decide with the board, do we want to vote this? Do we want to continue it? What is the board's?
What's the procedure? This is a substantial change, isn't it?
It's a change to the special permit.
Right, which is why we opened the public hearing and then took the new information.
Should we have a draft decision?
We could have one ready for the next meeting.
I think we should do that.
We're meeting on the 20...
Tuesday, June 14th.
So we're meeting...
And if you wouldn't mind a quick poll of the board to see if there are any conditions in mind that I should focus on.
Why don't we do that after? We're running late. Why don't we'll continue, we're going to continue this to a vote on, we're meeting in 10 days.
Yeah, Tuesday, June 14th. If we do this one right at 6:15.
Sure. And thank you all for coming and your input. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we're running a little late. We have 6:45. Continue public hearing, major use, aquifer resource special permit, 1 Monarch Drive.
That one is a continued public hearing, so...
I'm surprised at the level of historic support.
People that actually want to buy there and want to make sure they buy.
Well, I'm afraid that they're getting excited about the affordability in reality.
Anyway. Okay, 6:45, continue public hearing, 1 Monarch Drive.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for having us back. We were here a couple of weeks ago for application for site plan review, special permit for Aquifer District and a major industrial use. Just to sort of reintroduce the project, it's a 98,000 square foot building that we're proposing. It's an industrial high bay flex type building. It is sits up on the hill behind the Amazon, and I believe Marin has a couple sides. So last time we were here, I think we had some technical difficulties that maybe led for a little bit of a sort of misconception about the project. The total parcel that we have acquired is a little over 20 acres. We are developing less than half of that. The remainder of that property will remain in conservation restriction and will be used as part of our conservation management plan for preservation of and mitigation of the Blindings Turtles. In addition, I think we talked a little bit about how we were being a thoughtful developer. I don't know that we really elaborated on what we meant by that. Sue at Places, Sue Carter is also here at Places. I also didn't introduce myself. Kyle Rayner at BMD. Sue was very thoughtful about how to mitigate the stormwater. It's an aquifer district. We were very conscious about that as well. Other thoughtful decisions that we've made in developing this project, this is probably going to be one of the first buildings that's going to have a fully electric heating system, so it's going to be an air source heat pump. I know a lot of the buildings that are going to that, the heating system have a backup of it's propane or natural gas. It's going to be fully electric. We made that decision, obviously, for a number of reasons. We're also along in conversations to put solar on the roof. And we've also mentioned electric charging stations. In addition to that, we also have Brian Butler here from Oxbow Associates to talk about our plan for mitigating the impact of the turtles. Our plan to not only during construction, but also to sort of restore the habitat and make sure that they continue to thrive on this property. We also have Jason Gar from Arco. Arco was the general contractor that built the Amazon facility. They have a lot of experience with how they manage the construction site for that project. And he is able to answer any questions about how successful they were with managing the sort of impacts of turtles during the construction. So I will hand it over to Brian Butler, Oxbow, and he's going to sort of talk about our plan and how we're going to mitigate the impact.
Good evening. I'm Brian Butler, as Kyle indicated, Oxbow Associates. I'm president and partial owner of the company. I share it now with Scott Smyers. And we've done innumerable field studies and permits under MISA, under the Mass Endangered Species Act, quite a bit for Blindings Turtles. I did my thesis work with Blindings Turtles and have been working with the species since about 1981 in one capacity or another. Including we worked on the Arco project that just northeast of here, the Amazon building on Tower Mark back in the day, which is south of here, south of the Sportsman's Club, and various other field studies and permits in New Hampshire, Massachusetts, and New York with regard to Blindings Turtles. This project, I did watch the video last. I was absent last time, but I did watch the video of the proceedings from your meeting, and there's some concern about the impacts of Blindings Turtles and how this all fits together, I believe. And I think it was explained, but I'll just briefly reiterate that this was a previously permitted hotel project, as I think you're probably more aware than I am, or at least was, circa 2008, 2009. It was fully permitted under the Mass Endangered Species Act and went through MIPA review and so forth. It received a certificate from the secretary. And oddly enough, well, the economic circumstance at the time had a little bit of an influence on the not completion or incompletion of the project, or actually never got started, with the exception of the conservation restriction was placed and deeded, or wasn't placed in fee, but the restriction was granted to the Littleton Conservation Commission under Article 97. So essentially the mitigation of the net benefit that's required under a conservation and management permit for a threatened species was already implemented, even though there was no benefit to the applicants at that time, which preceded all of us. The outstanding items from that permit, which is now expired, but is essentially being used as a model to obtain a reissuance or obtain a new permit from the National Heritage Program. As I said, the CRs were put in place, so that's kind of a bought and paid for net benefit is required under 1023 of the regulations for the director's ability to issue a conservation permit. I also called for a replacement of the culvert on Monarch Drive with an improved features for facilitating turtle movement. Beneath Monarch Drive, there's currently turtle crossing signs out there, but those are not particularly effectual for reducing mortality. So that was not executed. We are undertaking that as part of the conservation permit now, and we've come up with, we think, an improved concept design that less impactful or has zero impacts to wetlands and will serve the turtles in as appropriate amount as the previously proposed and approved iteration. It'll still be 8 feet by 5 feet wide and a dry culvert that goes beneath Monarch Drive. The other item that wasn't fulfilled as part of the old permit, again, the permit was recorded, the permit was approved, it was just never acted upon. The other aspect is the escrow of, I think at that time it was a $15,000 escrow to be placed into a conservation fund. I think it's going to be administered by the Manomet Observatory, which typically back then held a lot of the escrow funds for various conservation projects, because the division really can't do that independently. So they would take their share off the top of any of these endowments or escrows, but we're not sure if that would still be the case now. They still administer the Box Turtle Conservation Fund, but this may be a different avenue. So we'll adjust the $15,000 amount in coordination with Natural Heritage to adjust to today's dollar values. Also, there's a management scheme proposed for habitat management on the combined lots, Lot 1, 2, and 2A, or 2A and 2B rather. And we plan to fulfill that or implement that in the northerly parts of the, there's no pointer here, but.
See if this works.
Northeast, is that a?
On the.
It will work on the screen.
Yeah. Oh yeah, there we go.
Make it.
It kind of disappears when I hit the screen though. That's okay, thanks.
Okay.
Anyway, just where the north arrow is there, that yellow, just to the, down from the north is a little skewed here, so just down from there, there's a large area of early successional or mid-successional habitat, where I observed turtle nest yesterday actually, or from painted turtle, common species, as well as in the building footprint. We plan to manage that virtually in perpetuity as a condition of this permit that'll be recorded on the deed. It'll be the responsibility of the future and any successive owners to maintain that in an early successional habitat. The whole site, as it was discussed earlier, is a gravel pit. There was probably a half dozen gravel pits down in a kind of continuous chain here, north and south and to the west of this, back in the 50s or 40s, 50s, 60s. This was one of them. It was half built out. The easterly half that we're working in now, or proposed to work in, is succeeding to Russian olive and white pine and some other exotic vegetation, multiflora and so forth. Right now it's in a quasi-suitable state for nesting. There's patches of good nesting habitat within there. That will be eclipsed, in another 10 to 12 years, 10 or 15 years, especially if the autumn olive or Russian olive is not abated. The north of the ditch that that drains out of that detention pond there, it's kind of prominent in the center of the image there. And so just to the right of that is an area of grassland that's succeeding to pitch, or white pine rather, and Russian olive is more densely developed or more densely vegetated. And that's our target area that we're going to strip back to almost what it was like when the gravel pits were abandoned, sometimes in the 60s or 70s. It's a little more developed in vegetation, but that can be accomplished. The pine trees out there are 5 and 6 inches in diameter, and there's a lot of Russian olive and other vegetation, but the underlying soils are all that beautiful kind of bank run sand that's paradigmatic for turtle nesting habitat. So that's our intention, essentially to breathe new life into the old permit that's now expired, adjust it as needed for the to fit the modern set of regulations. The regulations were revised just in minor but meaningful ways in 2010. This permit, the current permit or the previous permit, was issued in 2009. But the performance standards of the 2-to-1 mitigation for threatened species and the habitat management improvements, barriers. During construction, we'll have an isolating barrier around the entire perimeter of the site to discourage animals from entering it that might want to nest there predominantly during June. And that's a fairly standard technique with natural heritage permitting. That active season, you isolate the site, as we did at the Arco site, just up the hill from here. And the crew, Jason's crew, someone called me, I forget his name, back in June of 2019, I think it was, that they found a turtle wandering around at the Amazon site. And so we instructed them how to deal with it, documented it to natural heritage, and the turtle was kept safe and whole, and the project proceeded. Again, the turtles will seek these areas when it's nesting season and it's freshly or recently disturbed soils. That's kind of that's a real incentive program for Blindings turtles to wander across the landscape if they smell disturbed soils. And these have been disturbed in one form or another for many years, with the exception of the Lot 1 development. But it's all closing in, and it's soon to be not usable for the animals. We also proposed, with the culvert that I mentioned earlier on Monarch Drive, think it's about 1,000 feet of permanent countersuck fence to discourage animals from crossing Monarch Drive, because I assume the signs usually only go up on a roadway like that when there's been significant mortality of turtles, common or not so common. So I assume some of the inhabitants or occupants of those buildings showed some concern and put those signs up. So essentially, the permit is the project will meet the performance standards for the Mass Endangered Species Act under the current regulations of the 2010 adaptations. There's nothing atypical or unusual about this project, except that it was mostly, has already gone through the permitting process, which in some ways is a convenience for me particularly, because I don't have to try to explain to the applicants why they can't use the entirety of the site, which is usually the case when it's a fresh undertaking. But this was already constrained by CR placed virtually in a donut around the proposed project site, and so we had a palette that was already defined, and we've gone to some measures to, I think, eliminate at this point all of our wetlands impacts as far as we anticipate. So it'll be a buffer zone project only. It'll be we've been able to accommodate the 50-foot offset that's required by Littleton bylaw, with very minor exceptions that are, I think, justified, and it'll be up to the commission's purview whether they want us or don't want us to manage the habitat within 50 feet of the wetland to the north of all the project areas. And if we could just go back to that one, I'm sorry, Mary. You'll see that, from the center with that big dark spot, that's the detention pond that was serves Lot 1 now. Just north of there, or up from there, let's say, that's not true north. There's an extensive swamp, shrub swamp that's in pretty good condition in terms of its invasive status, unlike the marshes that are across to the west of Monarch Drive that are almost monotypic in Phragmites, the tall reed, or Phragmites communis or australis. Just north, or just downslope or downhill from the Yellow Arrow, there's a nice little marsh area there that adjoins area to be managed. It seems like a good refuge for turtles, and particularly for hatchling turtles. We don't really want hatchling turtles to have to come out and then have to go across something like Monarch Drive to get to their habitat. And so you'll see the habitat to the north, northwest, and even to the extent northeast is all very well suited for Blindings turtles. Much of the Beaver Brook wetland historically was, but it's been degraded by Phragmites. I think someone at the last meeting mentioned there's quite a bit of protected landscape around here. Some of it's Harvard Sportsman's Club, some TNC land, and of course the Littleton conservation lands are contributing, will support our efforts to make perpetual nesting habitat, which is usually the limiting variable for rare turtles, for long-lived species like Blindings, wood turtles, box turtles. The early successional habitat comes and goes in the blink of an eye, and turtle's 80 or 100-year life span, and maintaining it. We have another project that we're working on the North Shore that is sort of an analog, where we'll maintain 5 acres of nesting habitat where only about a half an acre existed prior, and that'll be an obligation, perpetual obligation for that applicant, as will be the case here. If it's done right, it's not that big of an expense or burden. Just takes going out every 4 or 5 years and making sure that the weeds haven't grown up and the Russian olive hasn't retaken the habitat. So once it's executed, it's fairly easy. Yep.
Does this butts right up to the 58 acres that Amazon donated to the town?
It does, yeah.
Is that right where the north sign is? Is that where it starts?
I believe it is. It's the assessor's maps and so forth haven't been updated, so we've been groping, trying to figure out where exactly that is. But so we know that there's land donated as part of that on 153, I think it was, Taylor Street.
And there was some off of Monarch as well.
Yeah, I think it was all derived from this. I'm really not informed on it, but I believe it was all derived from the single parcel there. But we couldn't represent it because we don't have that line work. Okay. So anyway, I don't want to belabor this or drag your already late meeting out any further, but if you've got any questions with regard to the MESA process, the animals biology, or how it all fits together, I'd be more than happy to respond.
Does anyone have any questions about the...
I do. I just want to know the acreage that will be perpetually maintained for the turtles.
We have about 8 acres to work with. Some of it's buffer zone, some of it's wetlands, so it'll probably be in the range of 4 to 5 acres of actual manipulated landscape.
Roughly
You're right,
here.
you're right in the zone there, yeah.
In Sue's presentation last meeting, where we were looking at the building, there were all these sort of lozenge-shaped, I don't know what they were. Something to it. I don't know if we have.
If you go to the last
The tree
slide.
lines, is he talking about?
Yeah, I think that.
There were line, it's not that, it was from the original, well, I don't, oh yeah, no, it is
I think
that.
it was the conservation restriction lines
Right,
that go
but
around the
you
outside.
have them divided into,
Right.
and we were just wondering, I was just wondering what that was about. You weren't sure at that time either.
So, part of the, if I can just point on this, part, like this conservation, or this CR area allowed drainage. This area allows drainage.
Okay,
This area allows drainage. Nothing here, nothing here.
so, okay, so not everything is assigned a specific purpose, it's just those three.
Right, we had
Okay.
these 3 for drainage, and we have septic area 1 and septic area 2.
Okay,
And those were designated on the original plan that created the
Right.
conservation restriction
Okay.
areas. So we felt that because that was the original agreement with Natural Heritage,
Yeah.
we totally honored that. But then we also had the overlay of Littleton having a 50-foot setback with no disturbance, which made some of these areas designated for drainage unusable because of the buffer zone.
so how does that work in with?
So to clarify,
turtles?
we're not using the
We're
drainage.
not using it,
Right, okay.
right. So we're exceeding what the original
So
CR
you're
had
you're maintaining
anticipated.
the original CR, but you're
Right.
not, okay. So does this have any relation to the turtle situation? Or what on the area that's to be disturbed, what are the, what are the techniques in place to protect the turtles?
The acute techniques would be an isolated exclusion barrier for
Okay.
during construction, at least during the summer months. You don't really need it during the winter months. So if the project were to commence, say, in November, you wouldn't need any exclusionary barrier until April 15th of the following year. Then you'd have to lock down the site essentially to keep animals out of it during the construction process. After that, that would be removed. We would have at that time barriers along 1,000 feet of both sides of Monarch Drive or thereabouts to essentially force animals into the culvert, which would be oversized and daylighted. They'll have daylight grates in it so that it doesn't intimidate turtles from using it. Turtles or other wildlife would be free to use it. And we haven't gotten that far, but we can integrate nesting habitat into the septic systems. We've done that at least in one case, because you can't plant trees, you can't plant shrubs, but you can plant grass and you can plant it sparsely in a sandy matrix. So we haven't worked out all those details with Natural Heritage, but we've had numerous discussions with the program just to inform them where we're coming from and what our approach is, and we've received affirmative feedback from them thus far on all the points that we've addressed.
Delisa, any questions? No. Tyler?
Well, could you go back to the aerial photograph of the site? Because I just want to try to figure out where the septic system is. It's on the creek side of the proposed building.
Isn't it over here somewhere?
Yeah, you're very close. There you go, Sue.
There's an existing cart path and utility easement, and here's septic area 1 and septic area 2. And those are areas that are currently wooded. So it's, where it says parcel 2B, that's adjacent to one of the septic areas, and the other one's sort of this triangle area on the other side of the utilities.
Those are quite remote from the retention pond and the proposed nesting area up at the top.
Right. During construction, those will be part of the silt fence barrier to keep the turtles out. But they are close to where the ditch is, so if the animals want to migrate there and nest at a later time, as Brian said, if the grass is sparse, they may have nesting areas.
Do we have an image of a Blindings Turtle? I don't know if I've ever seen one.
Oh, no?
How big are they?
They're about 9 inches is a large adult. They do get
Because I
bigger
saw
than that.
one, something like that on 119.
Would be surprised.
Yeah, in
Yeah.
the middle of the road, crossing the road, and it was about this big.
The distinctive thing is a yellow chin, kind of like a lemon.
Okay.
Solid, no spots, no stripes, just yellow. But if their head is in the shell, you won't see that. But that's the.
I'm trying to dig one out for you. I got one in here somewhere.
Okay.
But if there's a ridge on the back, stay away because it's a snapping turtle.
And this may have been a snapper.
They're about, they look like a helmet because they're very high dome. It's sort of almost a tortoise
Okay.
morphology more than a pond turtle because they do a lot of overland
Like that?
migrating. So that, and which is why their conservation status, or at least one of the reasons their
Anna, do you have any questions?
conservation status is as it is.
So I have a question regarding some of the comments that have been provided by residents that were posted. So from that perspective, are the residents' concerns for these turtles unfounded?
No, because anywhere where they exist and where there's, potential for a change in landscape, land use, is a concern. We fortunately live in a state that has a pretty advanced National Heritage Program and regulatory structure. We work in New Hampshire and Connecticut and Rhode Island, and I can say that the processes there are much more frustrating and not particularly effectual all the time. Each state has an Endangered Species Act, but ours is at a pretty high level of refinement and predictability, both for the applicants and for the regulators. As when the revisions were made in 2010 to the MISA regulations, it was a much improved document, and much like the Wetlands Protection Act, it's not perfect, but it's a very very good and very advanced regulatory framework.
So obviously, you're going to be, if we approve it, we'll conditionally approve that everything that National Heritage deems on this site is going to have to be cleared.
Yeah, I mean, this process notwithstanding, Heritage is going to impart their requirements, regardless of what the local regulate, they have some deference or some respect for the local, but they.
They supersede us.
Yeah, they just have to abide by state code or state statutes, and they're very guarded about being consistent from one project to the next with the same species, because they are very sensitive to being. They went through the ringer legislatively a couple of years ago, or 2009, 2011, 2013. They were challenged. They prevailed with maintaining the regulations as is, and they've succeeded even when conservationists sue them and when developers sue them. They've always prevailed, to my knowledge, in each court case. So they seem to be implementing the regulations appropriately.
So when within the process of this whole project would they come in?
They will submit to them a draft conservation and management permit. Once we refine, we don't want to go to the well multiple times. The best methodology for submitting a conservation management permit is submit them a draft, work out the details, then submit it in an official manner, which starts a 30-day review period, a statutory timestamp for it. We won't be able to obtain a permit in hand per se until the MIPA certificate is finalized. That's one of the requirements of MISA, is that the director can't actually hand you the permit. It can be sitting in the drawer waiting for a signature, but it can't be issued until MIPA is complete. And I don't know if we've announced that the MIPA submittal, the expanded EENF, will be noticed in the January 8th monitor, I think. So that's the first stage of the MIPA review.
June 8th, not January.
What did I say?
January.
I'm out of touch.
Where are we at with Green, and have we gotten?
Yeah, we got initial peer review comments from Green, and Sue's team is taking a look at those, and we'll be responding.
Yeah, I've looked at it, and it's just going down the checklist for them, and we anticipate getting revised plans back to them as soon as we can, hopefully next week.
Do you have any more questions?
Have we contacted, or has anyone contacted Light and Water to have them comment with regard to the adjacent property where the wells are?
We got them right behind us, we can ask them right now.
Yeah, we've taken a look. We don't have any major concerns. I heard your question earlier. The
the test well is actually right in the vicinity of that yellow north arrow there.
Okay.
So it is pretty close, but it's, we're abutting the portion of those parcels that have the conservation restriction on them. And so, I mean, we don't have any particular concerns there.
How much land is left in its natural state between everything that's back there, if you had to guess? You've got 58, they've got 20, you've got the Rod and Gun Club and everything else. You have,
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's hundreds of acres.
Hundreds
You can
of
count all the
acres.
wetland. Yeah, you can trace a polygon around more than 500 acres from Route 2 south to Tower Mark, all one contiguous.
So there's quite a bit of land there.
Yeah.
Okay. You want to continue this till?
Do you want to try on the 14th or, well, June 14th or July 14th, which is better for your schedule?
I guess the question is, have you been in contact with Green? How crazy busy are they?
They've been finding pretty quick turnaround.
Okay.
Well, I would just say that for the next time around, it would be really beneficial to our board if you had the chance to review them with Green and had an opportunity to comment back, because sometimes applicants come in too soon and they haven't had the opportunity to.
What I would suggest is if we get close to the time and they have not had time to do a follow-up review, that if we could contact Maren and perhaps if we haven't made enough headway
We'll push
to
it up to
continue without testimony and continue.
For our next meeting, can you bring us a bigger map that shows
Sure.
everything around it, so that gives us a better idea of we're not looking at just this one little area, we're
Not
looking at a huge.
not a problem. It's
Okay.
just that when you get a bigger aerial, you really lose being able to see.
Well, we don't need the detail, we just need to see how big it is.
Okay. At the last meeting, there was discussion with the board members about wanting a site walk. Is there any interest in that? We weren't sure because it
During
seemed like.
this time, would it be bad because of they're moving around, or?
Yeah, I thought last time we were told that that wasn't appropriate at this time, so, because it's June now.
With regard to the turtles, you mean? Or-
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they're only out, they nest, particularly Blindings Turtles reliably nest, 6 PM to midnight. Their painted turtles will nest during the day, but, even if I ran into one out there yesterday or the day before, wasn't yesterday, I was in Agawam. Yeah, that's not a real concern. If you were
you
out
wanna
there
set up
with
a meeting?
dirt bikes, maybe, yes, but.
Do you want to walk it?
If there was interest, I would do it. I don't really have to do it, but.
I actually did,
All right.
very shortly after the last meeting.
Okay.
I snuck in.
So you can conduct the tour, Bartlett.
Yeah, I could.
Well, if you have an interest, and I think we probably should set it
Well,
up
I mean,
to
I
make
could
it
go,
optional.
I like Bartlett's, I
Yeah,
mean,
why don't
we
we
just
just
drive to
go
the
take a
parking
look at
lot.
it?
Yeah, 'cause
I've been out
otherwise you
there
don't know
many
what you're
times with
looking
water
at.
department, so I'm pretty, but, yeah, why don't we all get a chance to go out and take a look at it? Okay, so why don't we put this on for 12?
So Tuesday, June 14th, just 6:45?
I just wanted to see if there's any questions related to the type of building, the speculative use. While we have a couple of our additional people here, if there were any concerns related to that, I would love to.
Well, if you're going to tell us you have a tenant, a prospective tenant, that would be awesome to hear.
We have a prospective tenant. I was actually looking at the lease comments and so we're working on it. We have something that's in process. There's nothing that I can announce or let you know, but to address your concerns last time about the Aquifer District and the regulations, pretty big section about their compliance with that.
I think Sue did a great job with the drainage, how she explained it and everything, so I think we're good from that standpoint. The building, I think, it's a nice looking building, I think it fits well and everything else. I think our biggest concern is how it's, the impact of what's there and those kind of things, so unless anyone else has any, we can continue with.
Well, I think that'll go a long way, and if there is an actual tenant that we can speak to that wants this property versus anything else that we might have in town, because that's really been one of the issues that has been raised is, well, why there when we have so much other undeveloped or unused space, so.
Yeah, and to address that, I think last time we touched on it a little bit, that this is a uniquely situated property. That's why Amazon wanted to go right next door. The access to 2
Lauren,
and
can you go
495.
to the first slide? Just a
You know,
little more
it
of
really
an
gives great
overview.
access for this type of use and, while also mitigating traffic impacts to the rest of Littleton. So I think 100% of our truck traffic is projected to be on 2 and 495, as opposed to maybe driving through the middle of town. So I do appreciate that there are some other buildings that are underutilized, but these types of tenants really look, it's a very close proximity to the interstate or highway. And in terms of, the lease, we talked about last time that they'll have to come back once we are able to indicate that we do have a specific tenant.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Do you want to set up a sidewalk time now while everybody's here?
I think we all want to do it
Okay.
kind of on our own,
Okay.
just to get a feel for it.
The site has been posted, no trespassing. But if they know that board members may be going out there, they can.
I think the biggest thing is seeing the expanse of what's out there, how much land is actually out there. This doesn't do it justice.
Mr. Chairman, you can, there's a ditch that kind of wraps around it. If you don't take the already established utility path, you can actually cross it. It was dry the other day, so you can, if you want to see the backlands that's in the CR as well as the development envelope, you can just probably cross that randomly, but it's a little disorienting out there with the thick vegetation, and there's probably no shortage of ticks, so just be,
That was my question.
cautious.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we'll continue it if you guys are going to be ready till the 12th. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have a 7:15 or thereabouts, 242 King Street.
Speed it up.
All right, I'll talk faster. I'm going to make up time on the A&R for the drive, all right? I'm going to try to get us almost to 7:45. We got 5 minutes for the water department. So, anything new to report to us about the facility at 242 King Street?
Not too much new. Unfortunately, I wasn't here last time at the hearing. As you know, Dave Ketchum was with CDM Smith. He wasn't able to join me tonight, but I think that last hearing was the day after we received the peer review comments from Green. So we've been working hard on those for the past few weeks. Mara and I actually had a meeting with Green and CDM last week just to make sure that everyone was on the same page and that we were addressing the comments and concerns adequately. That meeting went well, and I think it was Tuesday of this week that CDM sent over sort of detailed description of how they'll address each of the, I think it was 37 comments. And then Green responded today saying that all looked good to them, they were in agreement. So basically all we need to do now is have CDM update the plans, make all those changes. Myron has up on the screen one thing's a revised planting plan there. That was something that was discussed a little bit last time. So we're essentially, all the trees that we're removing are essentially being replaced somewhere else on the site with new trees. I think there's 72 new trees being planted.
How many?
72, I think it is. If you look at the really fine print on the table, you can.
So that means
add a little-
72 are being removed?
I believe it's actually more trees being planted than are being removed. I don't have the number exactly that are being removed, but they're all shown on the plan there as the gray little circles. So I think that's essentially where we're at. I mean, we don't obviously have the revised plans for you tonight, but I think since Green was in agreement with our approach to addressing them, I think what we would hope for tonight maybe is a conditional approval, and we'll obviously be submitting the completely revised plans as soon as possible, but I'm obviously happy to take any additional questions or hear any additional comments tonight.
They're pretty close? Yeah. Do you have any problems with closing it and conditionally approving on them and Green? I'm pretty sure you guys are gonna do everything you can to make sure the quality is safe out there.
Yes,
I don't know if
that's
you
our business.
have testing wells for yourselves, but I think if anyone could be held, whose feet could be held to the fire, it'd be you guys.
Yeah, I would say so.
I have no problem with closing it and conditionally approving it. Anyone else? Do you, Anna?
So if we close it and conditionally approve it, we'll look at a decision the next time, right?
Yeah.
There's a decision, there's a draft decision ready. There was one issue that was deferred to the board, and that was regarding the number of trees that were being removed, but then the planting plan shows that they're to be replaced. So that added that. And then this rest of the standard conditions for Aquifer and Water Resource District, except for the need for, future need for monitoring wells. And
They would probably be pretty good with that one,
just-
yeah.
and it's,
So I'm fine closing it, but I would like some time to look at it.
Sure, we'll vote it next, on the 12th, is that okay?
Sure.
14th.
14th, whatever it is, so.
Is there any, does the plan indicate the size of the trees, the caliper of the trees that you're putting in?
I don't know if it does on there. Oh, the new ones that are going
The new
in.
ones
Yes, yes, it
going
does on
in.
the upper right table there.
Okay.
They're obviously younger trees. I want to say they're like 2-inch diameter or 1.5-inch diameter, maybe. I can't see it from here. I don't know if Martin.
No,
Yeah, they got-
1.5 to 2.5.
Yeah.
yeah. And then, if I remember the description from existing conditions, some of it was not native species, invasive species.
Yeah, that's some of the
Yeah, there
trees
was, there was.
that are being removed.
There's a whole planting along the highway that's all gonna stay anyway, that's,
right.
yeah, so that's all pines and everything else, that's a 20-foot, 30-foot swath,
Right.
all the way down the whole property, so that's not even part of this planting prep.
Right, and same thing along the brook. Along the
Right
brook,
there
we're not
on the
touching
brook,
any of the
yeah.
trees within. I don't think we're touching any of the trees within 100 feet of the brook. So.
Yeah. Yep. All right, so,
So we're going to close the public hearing?
I'll entertain it, I was just getting
I
to
move
that.
to
Entertain a
close
motion
the
to close
public hearing.
Second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And we want to conditionally approve it.
Yep, I'll schedule that vote for early on the 14th.
Okay. Perfect.
Excellent. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thank you, Corey.
See, I've caught up now. I've got a 740 Manchester Drive, A&R, Lot A. Anybody here for that one?
Well, that's the town's application.
See, I'm gonna be on time, because we can do this in 2 minutes. I'm confident.
Very proud of you.
Hey. This isn't my first rodeo.
Okay.
I'm not saying we're not gonna get late after this, but, so this is the lot we're selling to the neighbors.
Yeah.
It's not a buildable lot, it's,
Went through the lot sale program, town meeting approved,
so just a little history. In the old days, the town used to quite often sell lots that they got for taxes, especially down the lake area, all these schmadback lots. Town got it 20 years ago for taxes, they've just been keeping it. The resident next door wants to buy it just to make their yard bigger, you can't build on it. I think there's a stipulation that it can't be well, it's the old schmadback lot, so they can't be put back together. And then-
yeah, right, and this plan creates the parcel Lot A, or what's
Right,
called
it's
Lot
gonna
A
be-
there,
it's gonna
which
be-
is part of a larger town-owned
Right,
parcel.
so
the
it's making a
small pieces-
non-conforming lot a little less non-conforming is what it is. They've asked to do it in the old days. Anyone who wanted to buy one of these old smadback lots, if they were in a direct abutter and it improved their property, usually the town sold it to them.
So,
it's 36.
Lot A is what we're talking about?
Yeah, Lot A. It's 4,800 square feet.
So then that means the entire lot will go all the way over to where it says two-story, number 15?
Yeah, it's gonna be included with lot 3760,
Okay.
3766. So those are all little old lake lots like this. That's why there's so many numbers there. This will be included with that, so it'll all be one big lot.
So the entire lot then goes all the way over to the Kerr property and then all the way down to the stone wall?
Which is, town owns the land in the back. That's the old Yap Farm area. That's the property that we bought from Yap's a couple of years ago, so that's conservation. The town owns the 2 lots beside it for access into Yap's Farm if they ever wanted to. This is just one of those lots they took a tax title. So it will not be buildable. It just makes the people next door, the Kerrs, give them, McGuire, gives them a little bit bigger. They've probably been using this lot for 20 years anyway, so this makes them. Any questions?
No.
Valid?
Is it being sold for a fair market price?
Yeah.
Okay.
What's fair market?
I don't know the number.
Do you know how much it sold for?
I don't recall.
All right.
She seemed like 15,000.
Yeah, it's not a lot, is it?
Okay.
It's not a buildable lot. Any questions? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve the transfer of Lot A to
No, you're approving the A&R.
A&R that allows the transfer of Lot A to lots 3760 to 3766. Anyone want to second
I'll
that?
second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
What do we need to sign, a Mylar?
Yes, please.
Okay.
You're still behind, Mark.
2 minutes. 2 minutes in the grand scheme of things is not bad. Considering tonight. If Turtle Guy hadn't talked for an hour, we would have been on
That's like the
time.
most interesting thing that happened at the meeting.
Jesus. Just that, right? Just the A&R?
Yes.
I mean, just the Mylar? He needs a life, I'm sorry.
Yeah, but he's like the best.
He is the best. Ryan Bell was the best at auction, yeah. That does it. Didn't we use him for the spotted salamanders on the land that we bought 20 years ago for Hartwell's? The 110 acres we got, remember?
Could well be.
Pretty sure we did, yeah.
And they ended up putting a turtle fence on 119.
Okay, I think, are we done for the night? Is that it? No, we have a continued public hearing, 7:45, master plan, development, aquifer, water resource district, sidewalk, curb cut, special permit, King Street Commons, 550 King Street, 550 King Street LLC. Is there anybody here for that?
Good evening, Mr. Chair. My name is Rick Broderick from TC, civil engineer for the project. Also here is Sal Foley and his family, who is the applicant. The way we left off the last hearing, if you guys recall, was we talked about sort of what's the next steps and what does it take to sort of move the project forward. So from then, I know that town council has reviewed a draft decision, which I believe is in all of your packets. And so what our hope is for tonight is that we can basically close the public hearing and enter deliberation on the draft decision. And of course, answer any questions that the board may have.
So we haven't touched on aquifer, water resource at all, and we haven't touched on traffic. Is it all right if we take those out of this and address them when we address the phasing and everything else?
Yeah, so actually, so the way we wrote it in, the way that it's in the draft decision is that we're almost going to treat it like each pad is its own specific site. So what we basically said is that when each project comes back with a phase, because that's when we'll, how much impervious area on each pad, where exactly is the parking lot layout, where is the drainage going to go, those kind of details reveal themselves at that site plan stage. So I'm comfortable either way, if you want to do it as a separate special permit for each phase, or we have to note that we, at a minimum, have to prove that we meet the criteria for the special permit with each phase anyway, so I'm indifferent, I guess.
The only thing we do need to do is the traffic study. This traffic study encases all of it, so we should probably get that out of the way, but
Yeah, so
I agree, aquifer, water resource is going to be
phase by phase, yep, exactly. And so what we did with the...
Do you have any problems with doing it that way?
Well, so I'm trying to understand, so I don't think this is even up on our page, is it?
This plan is up on the page, correct. That's where I'm showing it from.
Okay. So, and what about the draft decision? When
Draft
was that?
decision went to town council, and we haven't, sorry, I haven't shared this information yet, but town council was still working on it and didn't have a recommended version for the board for tonight. One of the questions was how to address the Aquifer and Water Resource District special permit.
Right, and that's why I suggest we take it out.
So we have a couple options. One is to, if the board is comfortable, ready to go forward with the master plan special permit, just close the hearing for that portion and leave the hearing open for the Aquifer and Water Resource District special. We could separate the different sections. I advertised a lot, just so we didn't have to re-advertise, but that might have gotten us into the situation. I'm not convinced that you have enough information to make all the findings, or I think town council's not convinced you have enough information to grant an Aquifer and Water Resource District special permit without having to go back and do it again.
I don't think we ever thought we were going to. I think we were just addressing it as part of the master plan, but it does make more sense to leave it open and deal with it as we deal with the phases that are going on, but still go through the master plan so that you have, so we all have an idea where the buildings are gonna be, what the density's gonna be.
This makes sense to do it this way because, you know, the truth of it is, right, we could depict stormwater treatment areas on this plan, but as we know, these puzzle pieces are going to move in the future, so they're really just placeholders. So I'm comfortable just eliminating that from this discussion and pursuing it sort of subsequently to the master plan. Our approach on traffic was, one of the conditions was that basically before we're granted a permit for phase one, that the traffic study would need to be completed and reviewed to the satisfaction of the board and the peer reviewer.
We all right with that?
So essentially, we're not allowed to start building anything until the traffic for the whole project is signed off on.
All done.
Right, including the mitigation, transportation demand management, all of the issues that.
Okay. So basically what we're doing is we're getting a finalized set of plans that show us basically a blueprint of what's going on there. Now we're gonna work on the details moving forward of how to make that happen.
Exactly.
The best way to, I guess the best way to.
Yeah, and it'll be over time. Like we said a couple times through the process, this will be a 5 to 10 year build out. So this will happen in phases. We'll be coming back and we'll have real time information about how things are going. Is the traffic that we projected in our study accurately depicted based on what we're seeing out there? We'll have lots of bites at the apple along the way.
When do you think you're gonna wanna come back with the first phase?
I think fairly soon. Yeah, I think if you made me guess, I would say probably later this summer. Coming back to talk about a phase one. And by then, we would need to have all this traffic, study done and signed off on.
Now, this is the plan that shows the buildings staying. There is a possibility that the buildings aren't staying.
Yep, and the way we represented that in the draft decision was that it's our intention to try to keep the two buildings. If for any reason that they can't be retained, it's not like we can come back and build more units. So what will happen basically is that probably what will happen is the buildings will reduce in height, basically, and give a little more elbow room, but no more units than what's depicted on the plan.
Now, one of the things we had talked about, and obviously that's going to happen as you move forward with the drainage and all that other, is maybe putting some parking behind one of the buildings that are earmarked for maybe a municipal use and stuff like that. Obviously, you can't do that because you haven't done any drainage or anything else like that, so it lends itself to leaving the permits open.
Yep, exactly. And our approach with that would be, when we're ready to activate that phase, maybe that's part of phase one, that we would, show what improvements to that lot, if any, were going to be proposed, and that we would have to demonstrate that it meets the requirements of the Aquifer Protection District.
Okay. There also is the Lapoli company was nice enough to let us get into the Tuttle House to take a look at the Tuttle House. I know there's definitely interest from the town of maybe having the Tuttle House donated to us. I don't think we're ready to address that issue right now, but I do want to make everybody aware of it. And I don't know if we would put it, how we would put it into it, but giving us another, say, 10 days to kind of address that might help too. So there's not an issue. That's not an issue.
Not an issue.
So we're meeting on the 12th. So do we have any other issues we need to? 14th, whatever day we're meeting on. Anything else? I mean,
I just am a little adrift about what's appropriate to talk about at this stage. We have a number of units, a huge number of units. When do we talk about affordability? When do we talk about characteristics? When do we talk about, it looks like you have about 650 what you would call workforce housing, about 150 of probably more upscale. When do we talk about all this?
You want to talk about it now?
Well, yeah. What do we feel like as a board?
Okay.
I'm a little overwhelmed by the number. I'm a little overwhelmed by the height of Building J, which is 6 stories high, and that's about as far as that's. I think that's appropriate for the level of detail of this, to the level of detail of my comments, that's all.
Okay, so when we originally started all of this, we did the test, and when we talked about level J, we did a balloon test, so to speak, that level J, even though it is 6 stories. The topography that's over there is going to be no taller than the buildings that are there. We wanted more height to give us more space. We talked about density of units, and we're restricted to what we can really talk about. If we go by the strict bylaw, it's about 800 units in here. We were at 650, and then we added another 120 units to get for...
It's roughly 800. It's not 800, but it's close.
760. 766 or something. But we got there from adding more senior housing. We're putting 120 age and place senior housing out here. That was part of the bump up. We have the...
Well, I guess where this, I haven't seen the decision or the draft decision.
Didn't we decide on all of this already?
We kind of did.
Where is it? Where is it written down? Where could someone look at it? Where could someone in the town? Okay, that's fine. But, you know, the whole town isn't interested in this. And
yes,
it needs to be more transparent, that's all.
I think the decision's transparent.
The decision buried, draft decision buried in the huge tree of planning board project sheets is not sufficient. I think there should be an abstract about what this project is going to mean and what it's going to do.
So let's go back to the foundation of what we started with. We started with a higher density in order to have other amenities that were going to be a part of this decision. We have the...
I'm not necessarily advocating...
I think the problem is, we have a draft decision that we've been working on. Town council recommended we not share it yet because we weren't there yet. But now is the time to have the discussions about the details of what you'd like to see.
Okay, so we've talked about the density in lieu of the deeply discounted senior housing, the 40 units that are going to be built. The decision says they're either going to be built on-site, 40 units deeply discounted senior housing, or off-site, some other place, probably within a mile of the senior center. So that's one of the criteria to get the density higher.
And how does that work into the 800? Is it in addition to the 800?
It's part of what we're talking about.
These are all basic questions.
No, I get it. I get it. But that's what we've been working out these past couple of months.
And I guess we don't need to rehash it in this meeting if we have this document, which I'm with Anna. We can't really look at this stuff the same day. And so look at this. This is great. I will be happy to go through it, but I can't go further than that.
I'm not trying to ask you to go further than that. I want to make sure that we're comfortable with where we've been going for the past 3 months, 4 months.
Yeah.
We've got all these buildings. We have 150,000 square feet of retail and 768 units of workforce housing, senior deeply discounted housing, senior age in place housing. That's on the table. So from that, we also remember we talked about adding those 120 units from the 680 for potential for assistance with our municipal needs as well as our senior housing needs. That has not been worked out. That is something we need to discuss. That's something that town council needs to work out, and that's why we don't have it in front of us right now. So that has to be addressed between the select board, town council, and, so that's why it's not in there as well. All I'm trying to do is, we've had all these meetings, we're to a point where we have a plan in front of us, we have the density, we have everything we want. I want to move forward so that hopefully town council and the select board can get all their ducks in a row. We can have a discussion about conditions of approval that we can all look at and see, and vote it on the 14th.
If you think you can,
give us ample time to review before the meeting.
We have a rough draft already. They're working on the final details of it. We should get it any day. I was privy to, I came in and got a copy so I could read it.
Well,
You can have it, no, you can have it, you can have it. And,
Well, I just want to say, I'm not attacking this in any way whatsoever. However, we have a town that has 3,000 plus or minus dwelling units, and we're going to be adding 800 to that number. It's a momentous thing, and I don't feel like pushing it along just for the sake of pushing it along.
well, we're not pushing it along. Not only that, this is a 10-year project. This is not happening.
I realize that, but it's setting the tone for the 10 years. I mean, we just need to make sure all our ducks are in a row, Mark.
Exactly.
So I would agree with Jeff, and so in thinking about how this has come about, when we met on May 12th, we had not seen that in advance, so we were sort of presented that here at our meeting, which in an ideal setting, we would be getting that in advance to be able to take a look at it, because it is significantly different than what had previously been considered. And it wasn't posted right away, and since then, Select Board has had conversations and meetings, and now there's this conversation about exchanging this town hall for another town hall, and the town would then receive senior housing, and on top of that, there are more units. So I think there's been a lot of momentum, but I don't think there has been a lot of public conversation about all of this from our planning board, and so it sort of feels like that's what's missing based on this conversation. So I would actually propose, instead of closing the hearing, that we leave it open for 2 more weeks, and that we have this posted now, and that we post a decision once town council has approved it, so that folks have something to react to. Because then we can say to the people who say, I was never told, well, guess what? We even left it open an additional couple of weeks.
Okay, well, let's start with this. The only reason you're saying this is because we asked them to show us
No, I get
all the
that.
scenarios.
Yeah.
We have other scenarios that show the total build-out of. This shows the building staying, if in fact they do actually stay. We don't know that, but we now see a rendition. Doesn't matter when we got it, okay? We got it a couple of weeks ago. As far as affordability, density, and everything else, if you have an issue with how we're going about it and what we're getting and gaining for it, then let's discuss it right now.
Well, as I understand it, are there affordability AMI data points in that decision? Great, I look forward to reading it.
And the 40 units that you're building are in the 40?
Yeah, we think that 30, our thought was we should give the flexibility to have a gradation between 30% and 80% for the 40 units, and the reason being, if you assigned all of them, let's just say at the bottom of the range, 30%, there may be seniors who don't qualify for 30%, but would have if they were 50, and you don't want to see those units go unrented.
And we're trying to do local initiatives so it all goes to Littleton residents.
Yeah, it's written in there for local preference.
Until we have this draft decision, we really can't discuss anything.
Right.
So,
That's what we have.
yeah, so let's,
Keep going and get to a draft decision.
right, yeah,
Okay. We've talked about all of this. We're not seeing anything that we haven't been talking about.
No, I haven't said that. I'm just
Okay.
simply saying
Yeah.
that
And-
we just need a little bit of time to process
Okay, I'm
and to
good.
allow the
And
residents
thank you
of
for
the town
reminding me
to
about the
provide
balloon
input.
test, because I was there. And
Yeah, it was pouring
it was sort of
around.
shocking to sit in that gigantic parking lot and realize how big that parking lot was. So,
It's a big scale.
okay, so
development, yeah.
we're gonna look at the draft decision when it's available.
We're going to meet on the 12th of June, which is
No.
14th of June.
What do you have going on the 12th that's so top of
The
mind?
12th of never.
It's a Sunday. I don't think any of us want to be here on
Okay.
Sunday.
Are you getting married that day?
I'm
No,
not,
that's
no,
August.
no.
All right,
This
let's-
rate I hate. No, bad English, I hate. Do we have any other questions any questions of Ricky, any questions of Mr. Lapoli, of anybody, before we move on to start looking at the decision that Myron, Ricky, and Chris have been working on for the past 10 days, a week, and Select Board for that matter.
Select Board.
Have anything you want to, nope, you good? When you're just waiting for Chris to go through and get everything correct? Okay, all right.
Okay.
I would like to ask for some 3- and 4-bedroom family units to be included in this mix. I was talking to the executive of the Housing Authority this morning, and there's a waiting list of over 5,000 families looking for 3- and 4-bedroom apartments that don't exist. So, and that was by far the longest list of categories waiting for apartments.
Yeah, I think we had talked a little bit about, again, is it okay if I go back a little bit?
Sure.
So, part of the reason that the plan has evolved the way that it has over time, right, is to address the feedback that we've received here, at this board. Our intention, as we've sort of started the process until now, has been to collect as much feedback as we can, work within the confines of the site to try to deliver on as many of the items that the planning boards, would like to see in the plan. I would describe the plan that's up on the screen now as that's the maximum build plan. It was a response to trying to keep the 2 existing buildings on site. If you recall, originally we were going to keep none, then we had a proposal to keep 1. This is a proposal to keep 2, and it's a way to show that as a maximum build scenario, we could still keep the buildings and have everything fit. So while I understand it's a lot to look at, particularly because I think you just saw it the night of the last meeting, it really was a response to try to address as many of the comments that we had received during the previous meetings, to go through that. And although you did just see it, we tried to take our time and walk through each of the changes that was made, just to make sure you could kind of see what we're trying to do within the plan to make everything work and get as many of these comments into the plan as possible, including the 3-bedroom idea. So I think some of the discussion has been around the fair housing, and I think we've been hearing that there's a push toward making 10% of the units 3-bedroom units. So I suspect that'll work its way into the plan as well.
Okay.
Well, and it is appreciated that you all are listening and that you are coming back with revisions, so that's great. Thank you.
You still haven't listened to my curb streets.
I know. Curb streets, I know.
There's a roundabout.
We did.
Yeah, you got a roundabout.
We broke up the street. There's one really curved part of the street, the circle there.
Yeah,
two circles, I see.
Bartlett's Bump.
Yeah.
And actually, I'm thrilled if you could keep the existing building.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Us too, and I think, like I said, this is the maximum build. I think if we're going to keep one of the buildings on site, it would probably be the one that's labeled O, the one further to the east. For 2 reasons. One is it's sort of a little more separated from the residential area, so getting a little distance between the commercial and resi uses is probably better for the plan. And then also, if building N were to say disappear from the plan, that just, the concern about height, Jeff, that you raised, probably what happens is, a floor comes off these buildings and the residential kind of expands into the footprint where N is located. And I think that was a plan that was the iteration before this, had only kept one of the buildings that's out there, and you saw that residential area stretch and drop down a little bit.
You also put all the housing on the street, the form based on the street, so that we have...
Form based on the street, and we tried to bring more buildings to the street. If you remember, we had talked about the development of the street wall and how really the first version of the plan was lacking, had some pretty large gaps in it. So we're, as the plan has evolved, and it has evolved over time, but we've been evolving it with the goal of trying to address all the comments that we've heard at the meetings.
And I would say that the number of residential units that you've developed in that non-flat context, those are going to be very popular.
Yeah. We think so too. Yeah, and actually that was, if you recall, too, I think the first version of the plan maybe only had 50 or 60 units up there.
have many.
There wasn't enough. And that was a comment that came through the public process, which I think made the project better. So we're happy to have been through the process we've had. We thought we were closer to the end of it than we are. So it sounds like the move then is to request a continuance to the next planning board hearing? Is that
14th, June 14th. Vote it down, June 14th. Yeah, and hopefully we'll have, everyone will have a chance to see the draft decision and the revisions that go with it. So.
Okay.
But I think we all have a pretty good idea of what we're looking at and what we're doing. There are some parts that the planning board's not going to be involved in, that the town is going to be involved in, that we'll probably reference somehow in the decision.
Yeah, there's a lot going on here, and not all of it, to your point, I think, is something that should end up that ends up in a planning board decision. There's things that end up with host community agreements, things like that, that are outside of what a planning board decision would usually have.
But understanding that some of the density that we're giving that requires
Yep.
a host community agreement with the select board at some later date.
Understood.
And as far, and we all talked about potential of the title house maybe sooner rather than later, because somebody needs to mow the thing.
Yeah, I was gonna say, could we get it mowed?
No, but other than that, we're good, okay? Anybody else have any other questions about the plan before we continue it until the 14th? Are you good? Good?
So we could do that one at 7:15?
Sure.
When will Chris be finished with?
I didn't have a chance to check with him on his
Okay.
schedule.
Could you make it a priority for him
Mhm.
so that we?
Well, in fairness, they're finishing up the Mass Works grant, which is tomorrow.
Sure.
After that, Chris will probably have a little more time to deal with it after that. Anything else? Any other, no other?
Don't be disappointed.
No, we're
Just
there.
2 weeks in a 10-year process, so.
We're
We
good.
have to change some language in a grant.
Oh, okay.
There's some redoing.
Do you have any questions for us? Are you good? You good?
I have no questions.
Okay. All right, so we'll continue until
Any
7.
public comment? I don't know.
Anybody here from the public wanna? You?
No comment, no thank you. I was just going to say, Mr. Lapoli picked up his phone, so I'm sure it's going to be mowed tomorrow.
I know that the
Thank you.
I think it's just a miscommunication with the maintenance team.
I'm sure, yeah.
The back continues to be maintained, but for,
They forgot.
you must not realize.
Everything looks really good over there.
Yeah, it looks very nice, yes. And the building looks great inside.
Yeah.
Surprising how nice it looks. Okay, so we'll continue this till the 14th, 7:15. Thank you.
Thank you.
Look at that, we're still ahead of time.
Oh, my God, you've done it.
Maybe we'll get out of here early.
9 o'clock.
I move that we do not have 3-hour scheduled.
Oh, come on. In the old days, we used to stay till 11. The bars were closed by the time we got out. We have an 8:15 continued public hearing. No, brand new public hearing.
Consolidated public hearings, the Littleton Planning Board will hold a consolidated public hearing on Thursday, June 2nd, 2022 at 8:15 PM. We're good. In room 103 of the Shattuck Street Town Offices at 37 Shattuck Street to consider the application for special permits pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 48, and the Code of the Town of Littleton zoning. The application is for a cultivator and product manufacturer, adult use marijuana establishment under 17361 through 17364 and 173-194 through 173-202 of the Code of the Town of Littleton. Property location is 537 Great Road. Applicant is Community Care Collective, Inc. Applicant is seeking adult use marijuana establishment, cultivator, and product manufacturer special permits and Aquifer and Water Resource District special permits to allow marijuana grow and production facility at this site. Goes on to explain where you can find application and plans and provide comments to me or come to the hearing. And signed Bartlett Harvey.
Thank you.
You get around.
I do. Go ahead.
So, yeah, I'll get to his slides in a minute.
Thank you. I can get started. Dave Giannetta, CEO, Collective, Premium Cannabis. So we're here this evening with our counsel, David Julian from Vicente Cedarburg. And so we are proposing a co-located cultivation and product manufacturing special permit application. So what we are proposing here is the approval of a Tier 2 would be the classification. That is a state classification through the Cannabis Control Commission. What that simply means is we're going to be less than 10,000 square feet of canopy of growing area within the building. We have our retail facility located in the same building on the front section. I have a floor plan that I'll go through with you. We've been open for the retail for just under 3 months now, and things are going pretty well over there. No complaints, no issues, a lot of happy customers. But this project involves just interior renovation of existing industrial space. There's no new construction at the location. No outside or exterior proposal of any work of any kind. So, site plan review is going to be fairly minimal. We satisfied the one requirement on the retail end by doing a ADA compliant handicap access on the outside. We did a pervious paver there as required by our special permit for the retail. In compliance with the zoning bylaw, we are located within the industrial A zone, and which is designated for a marijuana cultivator and product manufacturer. And we're also not seeking any waivers from the bylaw. We are not within 500 feet of any schools or parks or anything like that. So also no home delivery is being proposed, no on-site marijuana consumption is being proposed or will occur. In just a little recap, in the fall of '21, we signed an HCA with the select board, and also in the fall, in November, we hosted a community outreach meeting. No negative feedback, very minimal participation. Our own Anna Houston was our only participant. She had some great questions, and hopefully we were able to answer them to her satisfaction. And our cultivator and product manufacturer license application to the state has been submitted and is pending review. So, Baron, I don't know if you're able to pull that slide, if you're able to go to the third slide there. Yeah, right there, perfect. So our, as I mentioned before, this is going to be a co-located cultivation and manufacturing facility located in the same building as our retail. So there will be a lot of the same operating procedures as we currently follow with the retail. The retail makes up 4,520 square feet, and the cultivation portion of the building is 16,080. Our estimated opening date is September of 2023. It's a pretty extensive and expensive build-out. We'll go, after receiving special permit, we would then go to the building department and, submit engineered plans for everything that we're doing. So we'll remain in compliance there.
Can we see the floor plan?
Yep, that's very next. So you'll see that I highlighted them the way that we did there. So if you can go, yeah. So right now, our retail, the 4,520 square feet, is shaded in like that purpley blue color. The space that we intend on growing within would be the green area, and then the yellow section up front would just be supporting office space to really both operations, both retail and cultivation. So we strategically set the flower rooms. Those are those three larger rooms in the middle to rear portion of the building. Just orientation-wise, the yellow and the purple actually face Great Road. Okay, so the back side of the building is heading toward the green, shaded green area is it's heading towards the gun club and that heavily wooded area back there. And there's one other commercial building behind us, and other than that, it's just heavily wooded area. And then the next slide there.
Before we go back, so a couple things on here. Fertigation, I've never heard that before.
Yeah, so basically that's the storage of the water tanks within the space. You see those set of stairs right there?
Yeah.
Okay, just to the right of that, it's not shown on this plan, but it is on the site plan. There's an existing overhead door there that has a ramp actually already, that we would use that for product delivery, product by, what I mean by that is like soil and, heavier product. Also, we can bring, any of the heavier equipment right up that ramp or right into that room. That's why it was designed that way.
So one more question.
Sure.
Mom? I know your mom. Is she going to be there? Is that her place?
No, that's not Mom's room.
There's no door in it, so I see that.
Yeah, no, that is just an easy mistake to fix. There will be an adjoining door in between Mom and Clone, and then a door from Clone out to the hallway.
Oh, don't clone your mom.
Yeah. So yeah, that would be that there. So that was just a mistake with the lack of a door there. But the rest of it is laid out appropriately. We did fit out actually the retail space identically how it's shown there. That's what we proposed. That's how we fit it out. The next slide will show you the site plan. So what's really important to point out here is the parking requirements, which we more than comply with. Comply to. So just to lay it all out, the retail section of the building is again 4,520 square feet. The requirement there is one space per every 150 square feet. So that would mean we would need 31 spaces. For the cultivation, we look at that as industrial use, and we base that on number of employees. Our expectation is really to never exceed 25 employees at one time. So we carried that high number. It'll likely be probably closer to 15, I would say, at any given shift. But at 25 employees, 1.25 spaces per employee would come to 32 spaces for the cultivation. You add the two together, we arrive at 63, and the site can accommodate 78. So we have more than enough parking available.
Okay.
Really here, this is, again, just to piggyback, next slide there, is just to show you kind of the makeup of our company on the cultivation side. So like I mentioned before, any given shift, we don't really plan on having any more than 15 employees working. I myself, I hold an office right there in the building. I go there every day. I live 3 minutes away, and I'm a very hands-on operator and owner. So as I am today with the retail operation, so I intend on maintaining that position for the cultivation. Security of the facility. I've already presented this security plan to Chief Plnbrd. He fully supports the proposal. He has toured the building during construction of the retail, also during operation of the retail, during operating hours. So he's in full support of it, and we do still plan on working together with the police department, and generating a plan that works for everybody from a security perspective. But kind of par for the course as far as alarm systems, video surveillance, cameras, secure delivery and transportation processes, all of which we submitted in our application to the board on May 5th.
May I ask a question on this particular slide? So it looks like from your plan that you are a year-round cultivation manufacturer?
Yes, year-round, correct.
Okay, all right. No days off, ever?
2 days, actually, Christmas and Thanksgiving. It's really following our retail schedule.
Okay.
Although I will say, you know, in cultivation, although the proposal here is to follow the hours that we have approved for retail, there's a high likelihood that as we get into it, we can dial back and we may be able to go Monday to Friday on the cultivation side. You know, we're seeking the consistent hours as the retail, just, it kind of causes for better flow of the operation, just, you know, if we went about it that way.
Can I stop you?
Absolutely.
Only because we have another cultivation company in Littleton. We can get you all the conditions of approval from there. We can get everything so that we don't have to reinvent the wheel for you, which we can help you that way, correct? You get pretty much everything from Mike. I want to talk to the board real quick about one issue, and once we get past that, we
know what it is.
good. Our bylaw says you can't co-locate on a site, okay? We've already done a waiver to do it once. Do anybody on the board feel this is a violation of that, or is this a continuation of the practice of his having a business there? So I just want to throw it out there and see where the board's with it. Do you have a problem with having? Nope.
No.
Do you?
No, not this particular.
Okay.
So from sorry, go ahead.
Why was that prohibition put into the
It
bylaw?
was more for a retail. I don't think they wanted two retails in the same place. This is
Not
two.
that two retails would ever be right next to
No, I know, but we
each
put
other,
it, we
right?
put it in there, we gave a waiver at another location that has a retail establishment if it ever opens, and it has a testing lab. So we've set the precedent, we've done it there. We have the same facility, we're gonna be doing growing and, which I think is what we all really wanted in the first place. I just wanna make sure that the board's comfortable with the fact that we're not in violation of our bylaw that says two marijuana facilities in the same building, the same area. So that's, I personally do not have a problem. I think this fits well with what we're trying to accomplish in the first place.
Vertical integration.
Right.
Plus Littleton has a long agricultural history that you can move forward.
So I just want to make sure the board doesn't have any questions. Do you have an issue with it, Ann?
Well, I don't know that Bartlett
did.
answered.
I think Bartlett wanted to know why I was asking the question, that's
But
why.
if it's, I mean, you're talking, if the bylaw is aimed at two retail or two similar functions under different owners, here we have the same owner, and presumably it's one company that's doing both operations. So it's a vertical.
Right. And most of this is going to be for your own consumption anyway, I would assume.
Not consumption.
I mean for your own distribution. That's
I'd be in a lot of trouble. No, yeah, so actually, we still intend on having a pretty versatile menu on the retail end. And so it's really just to help supplement and bring in some of our own product to the menu, but we still plan on having variety. And then from there, we'll wholesale out to other retailers who we've established relationships with already.
So Anna, do you have an issue with two in one location?
I kind of figured that was why. There was no waiver requested. What I would say is that I think it's appropriate for us to put into our prospective decision that there's an intentional reason for having done this. It's not a waiver, it's just saying that the board intentionally knows
Feels
it's
that they didn't need a waiver. And part
because
of our
it's
decision
the
was to
same
make-
owner, same building,
project,
walls adjoining, all
So our
that stuff.
decision was that we don't need a waiver for those reasons.
Right.
Okay.
So one more question, how does this fit in with the overall number of, I mean, we have a number of retail.
That's all we have, is the number of retail.
But, so we could have 15
We could have a
cultivators.
bajillion of them.
Okay.
Yeah, so-
There's a saturation of the market though anyway, and.
I'm
that's
just
why it's-
curious, yeah.
Yeah, no, fair question. But really the intent here is, this is not by any means like a monster operation. It's almost borderline on like that craft operation, pretty well controlled.
So the only comment I've heard about the existing one is the smell. I don't even know if that's a real comment, but I don't.
It's
it
real.
doesn't- Okay, but it doesn't seem like it would affect this
Oh, that,
particular.
that smell emanates from a sealed building. It's not
Okay.
supposed to leak.
Yeah, but are the people complaining because they live near it?
Yeah.
Or, okay, and there's no one living near this?
Well,
If I may just, comment on this. So, there's really one other comparison, Sanctuary Medicinals on Taylor Street.
Mhm.
There's a couple of differences that I would point out between the two of us. So their facility is much larger, number one. Probably will be somewhere in the area of 3 to 4 times the size because they're triple stacked. Okay, we don't have the ceiling height to do that. We intend on only being single level on tables rather than racks. So that's one, is just the overall size difference. Their method is more of a sealed environment where our method is actually to bring in fresh air, which helps knock down those odor particles in the air internally inside the building. Then upon exhausting, we have inline carbon filters that we intend on installing. So any odor hits the carbon filter internally before it exits the building. Also, to your point, proximity to neighbors, residential neighbors. Not that we don't have any, it's just that we don't have any that we abut on a lot line. Our closest neighbor is about, I would say, roughly 400 feet from us.
It's on Beaverbrook.
On Beaverbrook, correct. And we're down gradient from Beaverbrook.
You're below them.
And we also, like I pointed out in that floor plan, we strategically put those flower rooms, which is going to be where the odor derives from, all the way in the back. And behind us there is one commercial building and then heavily wooded area to the gun range.
Town wells back there, yeah.
Yeah.
Cell
it's-
tower.
Yeah.
Well, so you have thought about this issue?
100%, yeah. And if you look in our application, we have a pretty extensive plan for all nuisance mitigation, so that we've pointed out in there, so.
Okay, go ahead.
with respect to the other cultivator in town, when there were odor issues, there seemed to be some, how should I phrase this? Nobody quite knew who was supposed to enforce or what they could do to enforce it. So one of the suggestions I was going to make around proposed decision, draft decision, is that we actually identify what the enforcement process is, or what that looks like, so that we don't run into that issue again. Assuming there even is any odor. I'm just saying so that we can mitigate that.
Well, I would think it's the building inspector, the zoning enforcement.
Well, there's no odor bylaw.
Yeah,
but
I don't even know.
Let's
how-
write one.
Well, there's, like noise bylaw, they have decibel meters, but with an
Exactly.
odor bylaw.
So enforcement fell to a combination of zoning enforcement and to
Board of Health.
Board of Health agent. So that combination seemed to work, but I like the recommendation. We'll come up with some
Yeah,
wording
we'll
that
put it in.
to propose on that.
Just so that we're clear, yeah, that'd be great, thank you.
Any other questions for right now?
Is this a closed building with all artificial light growing the plants?
Yes, everything's gonna be indoor.
Hydroponic, right?
Yeah.
Is it hydroponic?
Yes.
How much water are you gonna use?
So we have, really, it comes down to the wastewater.
Mhm.
We're expecting to be somewhere in the area of 127 gallons per day. And so it's really not that much. We intend on trucking that off-site, actually. So it's not going into the septic system or anything like that. Just normal waste, through the facility will be going into the septic system. But this is more nutrient waste. And because majority of the water that comes into the plants is actually evaporates, through the growing process. And so really the wastewater will be removed off-site through like a water truck that would then go to a third-party location that would be likely used for irrigation, is how that water would end up getting used.
Okay.
It's its best use.
Anybody else? Anything else?
So, are you gonna, how much water are you likely to take out of the Littleton Water Department? Is that, are you gonna be a very heavy user that?
Yeah,
you need
it'll
to talk
be,
to them?
I would say it'll be in the area of about 2,000 gallons a day of intake. And then, you know, from there, it evaporates from there, yeah.
Are we going to continue his presentation, or are we going to ask questions?
I think let's finish with questions and continue it. How's that? Continue it to another date.
Okay, so I just have a few other smaller questions. So you mentioned that you have the application, and with the Cannabis Control Commission, so I think the last time we went through this process, we asked that you have your provisional license first before we did ours. And then on page 55, you said that, that the application is complete, that you have everything submitted, that the application is complete. So I'm just trying to figure out, what does the board think in terms of this whole idea that last time we requested that the provisional license be completed? We now heard it's just been submitted, so obviously it's not completed. So what should we do in this particular situation? And recognizing that even the Cannabis Control Commission in their process says that they will send something out that says their application is complete.
I think this is different because there's an existing facility there. He's expanding his facility to grow. He's not going to be able to grow. We can approve him. We can do all the site plan. We can do everything. He's not going to be able to put one plant there until cannabis people say he can. So I just say we keep going, and when he's ready.
Plus, I think that the provisional license is more applicable to a retail operation because they're limited in number.
I think they all get provisional.
They do.
Well, I know, but I'm saying in this case, since you're going for cultivation, it's much less likely that a provisional license would not be forthcoming because there's no limit on the number of cultivators that can be.
I think that's a good point.
If I may, in addition to that, my interpretation would be the intent of that was to not expend the planning board's resources on somebody who just doesn't have anything in motion. You know, in fairness, I've gone through the process, you know, on the retail level and shown credibility to be able to actually open doors, and, you know what I mean? And I think the intention here was to show that, you know, we have a serious applicant in front of us who's taken the steps with the Cannabis Control Commission and submitted an application and received the provisional. I totally understand your point, Anna, but, you know, I would just say, you know, the fact that it is in motion, what my hope was that, you know, any special permit that was granted would just have that condition that, you know, it would have to come with a provisional license.
Right.
You know, the goal here is to be able to get a little bit ahead because it's a lengthy process.
Right.
And with the special permit, I can then actually start to build out the facility. But to Mark's point, I would not be able to do anything.
It's more of a site plan than
related.
anything else.
Right,
Yeah.
so what I was going to suggest, similar to the other one that we talked about with the co-location, is that we put in the decision that this was intentional, so that somebody coming after doesn't feel like, oh, well, you let them do
Sure.
it. So I think because you have the experience behind you with the retail establishment, CCC has approved you, so those are the kinds of things that I think we should put into the decision as to why we are allowing this to move forward, recognizing that there's still a condition in there that you need to have the provisional.
Yeah, and Attorney Heap actually did weigh in on that before we went in front of Select Board. And I just cannot seem to find the email. I will find it, but he does respond to that point. He didn't seem, you know, in summary, he didn't seem to think it would be an issue because it's just not the same application, if you will. You know, being that it is the same building under the same roof where it's the same ownership with the retail and the cultivation.
Yeah, so that was what I would suggest.
Any other
Yeah.
questions?
Yes.
Okay.
These are really minor, but but they are important because it's part of the form. So page 20 needs the owner's signature and date. And you to date it as well.
Oh, yeah, I'm not sure why that's missing. We do have that, though.
Okay,
of
great.
course.
And then on page 22, you identified that there is, I think you identified as NA, but wouldn't today be the date of the planning board meeting?
It would at the time, I didn't know when,
Oh,
when
okay.
yeah, what the date
Okay.
was.
Yeah, so you can fill that in.
Sure.
So yeah, those are my comments.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else have any other questions? Do you want to continue till the 14th? Or do you want to wait another month?
No, I mean, it sounds like there's some, I'm ready for the 14th.
Okay.
I'd like to see if
Sure.
we could get to a draft decision, and
Okay.
we would get right on it on our end, and
Can we stick them on the 14th?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we'll put you on for the
And
14th.
did
12?
I hear that,
bad joke.
12th, 14th, whatever day.
did I hear that perhaps your side would have a draft decision coming my way?
Yeah,
And in a timely manner that we can all
yes.
review it.
Please.
To Anna's point, would you like us to work off of, any criteria? It sounded like there was a couple of additional criteria that, or should we just handle that with Attorney Heath?
I would say you have Chris, take a look at how we approved the other one.
Sure.
Make sure.
Okay.
You go from there, and then
Fair enough.
if you want to put in the fact that you're not asking away because we
Right.
got a determination that you didn't need one.
Yes.
On both counts.
Got it.
Put that
Right.
in too.
Okay.
I would just say that, that this is a different planning board than it was when that one was
Sure.
approved. So
Mhm.
think about it from, where the operation has evolved, how yours is different than perhaps that
Okay.
one.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Have a good night.
Thank you. I'm still ahead of the
You're
schedule.
you're amazing.
Okay, continuing this to June 14th,
June 14th. What time?
7:45.
7:45?
You bet.
Okay.
Thank you.
You know, what, time out.
What do you need 2 minutes for? Bathroom?
Yeah.
7:15 is the King Street, right?
Correct.
My guess is that'll go a little bit long, so do we want to make it 8 instead, just to
Give me
account
a
for
call.
that?
Sure. I'm generous today with time. Okay.
Sounds good.
Okay, thank you.
Now we have a
All right.
2-minute, we're gonna take a 2-minute
Thank
break.
you. Have a good night.
You wanna get up front here so that we don't have to yell, or do you wanna stay in the back?
No, I'll come up front, but do you want to do your A&R first? Because I don't mind being last.
I don't care. Why, do you have the A&R too?
It's just the A&R.
It's rolled up over
He doesn't want to sit through mine.
No, we'll do you next.
Do me next?
You're gonna take 2 minutes.
All right. Whatever you say.
Want me to give them the history, or you wanna give them the history?
Sure, you can do that. It doesn't matter.
No. How long you been in town?
I reviewed this on the
You remember the
project
old,
page. Yeah,
the old Allied plywood?
then it was Pella, and then it
Pella,
was
yep.
Egg Rock.
Egg Rock, and now it's,
What does Egg Rock do? I never knew what
Egg Rock made prefabricated kitchens and bathrooms that were going into hotels.
Oh, interesting.
And that's why they needed the outside storage space, and that's why we gave it to them. They would put them in a little shrink wrap, on a pallet in a shrink wrap building. They were all made, plumbing was done, everything. They would slide them in. They had a big job in, they were doing one of the big new hotels that were going in. They were prefab. It was a company out of Europe that was just getting a foothold in the United States to do this, and so it was called Egg Rock. And so that's what they needed the outside storage space for. So that's what this is. This is the building on the other side of the Foster,
Train station.
the train station, that building there. When we gave Stone Yard its permit to operate there, we didn't deal with the outside storage because they were storing rocks there. So rocks, there's no issue with them being hazardous or anything. They were rocks. So another potential client wants to buy it and wants to make sure that we still allow the outside storage that we approve for egg rock as
Yes, but even more than that, something that came up here is that there are conditions on this special permit that either weren't met, don't need to be met, weren't built out, can't be met. And it raised an interesting question about what happens to special permits when they're no longer applicable to what's going on the site. Because just today I had the same thing happen in one in Acton, and we're going back to '83 to try to revise some conditions on a permit that have nothing to do with how the site's being used today.
So, Mr. Chair, we do have to read the
I
public
know,
hearing.
I was just stretching, killing time while Maureen.
You could have juggled.
I juggled. No, I couldn't. Trust me, I've been juggling all my life. Go ahead. Ready, go.
Thank you. The Littleton Planning Board will hold a public hearing on Thursday, June 2nd, 2022, at 8:45 PM in room 103 of the 37 Shattuck Street Town Offices to consider an application for special permits pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, and the Code of the Town of Littleton zoning. The application is to amend an Aquifer and Water Resource District special permit under Sections 17361 through 17363 of the Code of the Town of Littleton zoning. The property is 265 Foster Street. Applicant and owner 265 Foster LLC. The applicant is requesting an amendment to a 2008 special permit to reflect existing conditions. It goes on to say where you can find copies of the application, and if you want to provide comment, come to the hearing or provide written comment to the planning board office. Signed, Bartlett Harvey Clerk.
You again.
Busy guy.
You get your name all over the place, don't you?
I'm famous. So good evening, Cheryl Gould for the applicant, 265 Foster LLC. 265 Foster LLC has owned the building now for about 6 years, 5 or 6 years. They would like to sell the building. The due diligence was done on the title history, and this special permit was filed in 2008, as we were saying earlier, on behalf of a company called Egg Rock that was doing some storage on the site at the time. Egg Rock, under this special permit, contemplated a number of things that they never did. One of the things that was contemplated was that they were going to increase the impervious area in the Water Resource District where this property lies, and that increase was going to be by widening the access driveway. They were also going to store some things on surfaces that would have increased the impervious area. In conjunction with the 2008 permit, there was also an order of conditions filed because that increase to the impervious and any incidental runoff might have impacted the wetlands. And so Conservation issued an order of conditions. When the due diligence was done for the sale of this property by the new buyer, these two things were discovered back to 2008. And so we engaged engineers to do two things. One, to close out the order of conditions by obtaining a certificate of compliance, and two, to determine whether everything that was required under the special permit was done. 265 Foster engaged the services of Beals and Associates. They did an extensive existing conditions plan with a narrative that's been submitted to you that reflects that Egg Rock never indeed expanded the impervious areas and increased the impervious area. They never widened that roadway, and they never did things that impacted the wetlands. So on one or two visits by the Conservation Commission, it was determined that that order of conditions could be closed out because there's no impact to the wetlands, and in fact has been closed out. There's one exception I'll make to that, and that is in Stoneyard's use of the property, they had done some clearing and snow pushing that went close to some of the edge of wetlands. And so they were asked to pull that back and put up some berms to prevent it from happening again. But that was not coincident to any increase of the impervious area. So that the Egg Rock special permit that you issued contains now conditions that never happened and are not intended to happen. It also runs to a company called Egg Rock, which is long since out of business. I couldn't even find them. And so what we're trying to do is have the special permit modified. I went back and forth about whether to get a brand-new special permit, but really, as I started to say before the hearing, the special permit sits on the registry records, and there's no way to satisfy someone looking at it that it's completed, done, and adhered to without modifying it, because otherwise a new special permit would be generated here, and the old special permit would still be sitting there. So I think this needs to be a modification. It needs to issue in the name of 265 Foster, the current owner, and then the conditions that I would like to change are as follows. Myron, one of the things I submitted last week was a red line markup of the existing conditions. I think that's the easiest way to look at this. If you had it handy, I don't know if you do. I think it makes it clearest if we could pull that up. So page 2, I believe, has the red marks with 30, which is the conditions there. So the first condition was that we would like to eliminate number 1. We have confirmed with the water department that the monitoring wells were not installed. They were required by this board only to the extent that the increase of the impervious area was going to create runoff, and the board wanted to be sure that there was no damage to the water resource area, and that monitoring wells would be installed for that reason. Water department confirmed they were never installed, they were never required to be installed, they are not being monitored, and they won't be monitored. We would like that one eliminated, but your safeguard is that down to number 4, you have a condition that says groundwater quality shall not be degraded below drinking water levels due to activity on this property. At the request of the buyer of this property, we are going to put in 2 monitoring wells. We've checked with the water department, they're satisfied 2 is sufficient. We're going to put 1 at each side of the property where there is any runoff at all, and they are going to be they're going to be tested and monitored, and they will stay in place. So that the number 4 condition could stay in place, that they not be degraded below drinking water quality from activity on the property. The reason that's a little bit important that it stay that way is because Myron and I talked about it in the water department too. There is going to be an impact on the drinking water quality on the perimeter of this site or the outside of this site from road salts from the highway. And so drinking water quality is never going to be great at this site because of its proximity to the highway. But this condition says not from activities on the site. So that's a safeguard that any subsequent tenant or user of the site will not be able to impact the groundwater leaving the site. The second thing we would like eliminated is the number 10 condition. That said, if Aggrock no longer conducts business on the site, the outdoor storage area will be restored by removing the pavement, loaming, and seeding the disturbed areas. Never got built, so there's nothing to remove and restore, and Aggrock has left the site. That sounds like something out of a cartoon. So we'd like that one removed if that's possible. Number 11 had to do with widening the right-of-way. That didn't happen, and so we'd like that removed. Number 11 says the retention area will be moved out of the right-of-way, and there's nothing to do there. There was no retention area. It wasn't in the right-of-way, and the right-of-way wasn't altered. And number 12, this said if Aggrock ceases, you're going to require a change in ownership or a change in use will require a new special permit. Your bylaw already says that any change in use requires a site plan review. And so what the buyer is worried about is every time he gets a new tenant in, he shouldn't have to come back to this board. It's only if it's going to be site plan changes that has to come back to the board. And the last thing the buyer has asked for is, you have a clause, I think it's in there already, and I think Mr. Montanari and I talked about it. No vehicular parking except on paved areas. I just want to get back to that one.
That was in the previous page.
On the previous page. The only thing they want to ask about that is no motorized vehicular parking, because a user of this site may park things like, I don't know, storage trailers or something like that. So that's a little bit overbroad and shouldn't have to come back every time that happens. So basically, we're asking for these modifications to this permit.
So, so the only thing that would trigger this is if you have a buyer who wants to do something different on the site, then you have to come back from modification to the modification we just did.
Right.
So this brings us to this level now, and then whatever happens in the future, if you have to come back for a change. So I'm okay with it. I mean, Sherry and I have talked extensively about it about a month ago, only because it was found out that, you know, when Stonyard came in, we didn't do anything to them because it was, they were storing rocks out there, and that was it. So now, and the board at the time didn't feel there was any issue with, you know, having piles of rocks out there. They're natural, there's, you know, you don't have to worry about runoff, you don't have to worry about vehicles or anything else like that, it was just rocks. So what's the board feel? It's more of a housekeeping issue than anything else.
I don't have any problems with any of the
Yeah, and it's, I mean, nothing that's gonna go in there can't go in there that is not conforming to zoning, which has something to do with use. I'm a little concerned, like you, Anna, like going back to the previous, the new building on Monarch Drive, you were going, well, like, we really would be great if we knew what was going in there. I understand the buyer's attitude, like, every time I get a new tenant, or what if I get half the building leased to someone and, do I have to come back? And I think we just have to rely on the normal course of building enforcement, yeah.
Well, this is a huge building with a big area that runs next to the railroad tracks that were never used forever.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, Egg Rock wanted to use it because it was perfect for them to build the little things and store them outside, put them on the tractor trailer and go. Great. They leave. Stonyard comes and says, I'm going to store rocks everywhere I can possibly put them.
Yeah.
You see the thing that's still there's on Spectacle Pond.
Well, they had some noise problems over there.
That's why they moved over there. So now, we never issued it because rocks are natural. They'd be like storing logs out there, as far as I'm concerned. So moving forward, you're going to have some sort of manufacturing or some sort of business inside the building that may never use the outside of it as well. All we want to make sure is that you don't park vehicles. So that's our biggest concern, parking vehicles. So that's all we should be looking at protecting. If they want to throw a bunch of 2x4s, they want to throw a bunch of lumber out there, we don't really care. It's the vehicles and the oil that we care about.
So I'm less concerned about the use than I am about the fact that this is changed ownership, right? From Egg Rock to 265 Foster LLC. Is that correct?
I don't think Egg Rock ever owned it. I could be wrong, but I think they were tenants. I don't think they ever owned it.
Oh, but they're the ones that are on the decision.
Because that's what they were using it for, as tenants, yeah.
Okay, so who is the owner then?
Foster Street Associated Limited Partnership.
That might have been the original owners who had it. They were when Stanley and Associates from Concord 30 years ago. They built it for the Pella people. They built it for Pella was first. Then it was the plywood people. And then they obviously must have found Egg Rock to go in there. And the only difference in this whole building and everything it's ever been, it's been a bunch of things, was Egg Rock put some storage outside. Everything else used to be contained inside the building.
Well, that's my ultimate question in this. Is the proprietorship changing or not?
Yes.
Then if it is, then this requires a brand-new special permit. And it says it very clearly under item number 12, it says, a change in proprietorship or change in use shall require a new special permit. So if we're changing proprietors, it requires a new special permit.
What was you talked about this at the beginning of the something to do with the registry of deeds or?
So going through the registry of deeds, if we issue a new permit in the name of the new owner or 265 Foster, either way, you're going to end up with this Egg Rock permit and these conditions still on the registry records, troubling any title conveyancer as to whether or not they've been complied with. So the first step needs to be to amend the permit to current conditions.
Well, but a new special permit would do the same thing, because right now, what you're doing is you are asking us to take this existing permit and mark it all up, and then it'll be new to what you want. Well, why not just do a new one?
Well, that's fine to do a new one, but then you would have to say this supersedes the one of 2008.
Well,
they all would, though.
To clear the registry
So wait a
records.
second, so why don't we, what we're trying to do is get the stone yard in compliance. That first, so they can sell it to the new buyer. Then the new buyer has to come in and do a special permit on their own. All we're trying to do is make it so that she doesn't have a problem with the registry about a permit that we should have done 10 years ago to make sure those conditions were taken off when the new person came in. That's what we're trying to do.
I'm going off what this language says. And it says if there's a change in proprietorship, then you should have a new special permit.
There isn't a change in proprietorship yet. The change in proprietorship will come when she sells it. Then they'll have to do item number 12 again. So we're gonna do it the first time to make it compliance, and then we're gonna do it a second time once you sell it to somebody else. If you sell it to XYZ Corp., they have to come in for a new special permit. But they'll be happy that their old permit was satisfied. That's all you're trying to do.
That's correct.
Okay?
And I'm all right, Anna, I'm really all right if you wanted to say new permit and it supersedes the old. It just needs to eliminate those conditions on this old one that nobody can say have ever been satisfied.
To get it clear at the registry.
Makes sense to me.
Yeah, I'm okay with doing it that way, that the new people have to come in. If they're gonna do outside storage or any of that stuff, they'll come in and give us a new special permit for that. But let's get rid of the old one first.
Should we, in the future, refer to, like, should we not have referred to Egg Rock in this decision, in this
We
permit?
didn't know if this was for Egg Rock.
I know,
What happened
but
was Stone Yard
can you
we never
be-
did anything.
You have to refer to Egg Rock? You can't just refer to
I think-
general conditions, or?
I think your permit ran to that tenant.
Okay.
It says Egg Rock on it. The issue we had was when Stone Yard came in, we all said, that's a bunch of, there's stone rocks there, what do we care? They're not, there's no outside storage, so to speak.
If I could just back up, and I don't mean to step on your words, Mr. Chairman, but when Stoneyard came in, I wrote to this planning board and to building inspector to describe what they were doing. The letter, I think, is part of the record, to essentially ask at the time, do you need a new permit or is this just storage? And everyone agreed that this was just outdoor storage. So it's not like Stoneyard came, 265 Foster LLC came in and tried to circumvent anything. We took the position that Egg Rock wasn't there anymore and Egg Rock's special permit was over.
In fairness to the board, I think we probably all assumed that you did everything on that permit by widening, and so it would made sense for you to do it, and we never followed up and never checked whether you did it or not, because it's not our job. So the fact that you didn't widen the road, which is fine with us, that you didn't make the pavers bigger or any of that stuff, I think is fine with us. I think this satisfies your registry issue, and then moving forward, if they come in and want to do anything on the outside other than inert storage, then they have to come before us. I'm good with that. Is anyone?
I'm going to jump in on two things. I know, I don't get a vote. Condition number one is a condition that says groundwater quality monitoring is required if the water department deems that it should be done at this site. I'm hesitant to recommend you get rid of that condition, just because of the way it's written, and that's the one we use for.
Well, I think the water department should actually.
If we just, I was going to recommend a letter from the water department saying the use on this site doesn't require monitoring at this time.
If the only issue is we're getting rid of the use of the site, and how long do you pass on this? 3 weeks, a month? Right?
3 weeks,
yeah.
And then the wording on number 12, where in red, it proposes a new special permit is only required if there is an increase in the impervious surface, and our bylaw is clearly different than that there are several conditions that could occur that would require a new special permit.
Which would be
And I would
what?
just refer only if required by the Aquifer and Water Resource District bylaw.
I just want to get it cleaned up. If the new buyer comes in and the water department wants to put monitoring well, let them put monitoring well. I don't want anything to hold up, because I don't think it's fair to hold up the purchase and sale of it, because back then they didn't need it, we never required it, the people that came in after them didn't need it, and now all of a sudden it's sitting there and lawyers, lawyers are playing lawyer, lawyering up, okay? Does that work?
Can I charge for the full hour yet?
So the decision says Foster Street Associates, but this application says 265 Foster LLC. So those seemingly are two completely different organizations.
Yep, sometimes when properties transfer that are within the Aquifer and Water Resource District, sometimes they come in and ask if they need a new special permit, sometimes they don't. The town never goes to the new property owner, says, we think you need a special permit because this is the way we read the bylaw. Whenever I get the question, I say, well, it's only for a handful of large properties that I recommend that they do get the new special permit because of the change of proprietorship.
So to be clear, 265 owns it now?
Yes, 265 Foster
And they're
LLC
selling
is
it
the owner
to
now.
someone
And
else.
they have a contract for sale.
But they weren't the owner in 2008.
Correct.
So that means 265 should have actually sought a special, should
Well,
have sought.
no, Lauren just said that she
Okay,
wouldn't.
so what do we need to do here to?
Nothing. We need to take Article number 1 out and number 12 out, let her,
Take Lauren's points into consideration.
for a new special permit, this is only going
Okay,
to be
all
good
right,
for
all
3
right,
weeks.
okay, then, yeah.
And then when they come in and they buy it, the first thing they do is if they need to come in for a
Yeah,
site
I got it,
plan,
I got it.
water department will weigh in whether it needs monitoring wells and all that other stuff.
When will the Title V documentation need to be provided? I saw somewhere in one of those notes that somebody said Title V documentation needed to be provided.
I don't think that has anything to do with this.
Okay, well then why was it in the document? I'll go find it.
I don't think it was in the planning board requirements, but it is something that the purchaser has asked us to provide, and it's a requirement for any transfer of property. So we are in the process of obtaining the Title V document for the buyer. I don't know how it ended up in the documents you saw, but maybe it's in something.
Page 5, evidence of DEP approval of waste system.
I'm sorry, page 5 of my application?
Yes.
Oh, because it's your checklist? Yeah, whatever we get for the Title V for the sale, I'll be glad to provide to the planning board. But that doesn't impact the special permit modification that we're looking for. Just my...
All right, so spend more time on this than most anything else.
Right.
So do you want to make the changes to the special permit from 2008 or 9, knowing full well that if your prospective buyer comes in and wants to do anything to change the outside of it, that they have to come in for a special permit? Okay? So I'll entertain a motion to approve the changes as requested.
I'll second it.
All those in favor? Aye.
No.
Jeff?
Aye.
Okay.
Okay. 4-1, okay.
Thank you.
We have an A&R for Lot 6 Constitutional Ave. End of the lot. Thank you. Do we have a plan? I'm gonna tell us real quick. This is just for financing purposes. Thank you, Sherry.
Thank
you. This is just for financing purposes, correct?
Yep. Tim Power with Land Strategies, representing the owners of the point. Just splitting off lot 6 and 2 lots to address some concerns of banks for some refinancing efforts going on.
Lot 6 is the theater,
Lot 6 is the theater and the Metro Rock building.
and then you're
And then
splitting off the forward part of
The
it?
future, yeah, below the line, there's the building M pad that's undeveloped at the moment. So the building M would be on lot 6B, and the cinema and Metro Rock would be on 6A.
Anybody have any problems with this? It's just-
So you said this is for financing purposes?
Yes. There's some, the lot 6B has some land court associated with it, but, I'm sorry, 6A, but 6B doesn't, so it's
Oh, because it's registered land.
registered land.
This is 6A.
Portion.
6B is all of this.
Correct.
No changing lot lines or anything else like that, right?
Nope, no roadway lines changing, nothing else changing. No, the site plan itself isn't changing, it's just dropping. Lots are the legal size within our special permit, they have frontage on the street.
Any questions? Anybody have any questions? I'll entertain a motion to approve the A&R for Lot 6, Constitutional Ave.
I so move.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
See?
Thank you.
Pays to be the last.
That's right.
Thank you. Are you thinking of selling it, and selling the cinema to the people who own the cinema, or is it just to refinance? You don't know.
I don't know. I don't think the cinemas, there was some chatter a long time ago, but I think that's.
Okay.
I make a motion to close our hearing.
To adjourn.
To
To
adjourn.
adjourn, I'll second that. All those in favor? Aye.